Chapter 45-20 Boom. The corpse of Tai Luo's corpse blasted out, and the endless power burst out suddenly. Dawen circulated in his hands, turning into a violent sword spirit, and slammed on the chests of the two old slaves. These two slave servants of Tianyao Shengzi, but first entered the realm of traces. How could they be the opponent of Tai Luo's corpse? The dead bones of the tiger are still there, even if the Taro Supreme Divine Corpse today is only just entering the Supreme Realm, but how can they compete with it? Suddenly, the two old slaves were hit by two space battleships, their bodies suddenly smashed through the gate of Shenjij and flew out fiercely. Call out. The two little black dots flickered in the air, but these two old slaves directly punched the two corpses of Taro God's corpse, blasting out of the Hades and even the entire Hades area. Suddenly the Enin, who was paralyzed in the ground, looked at the scene, stunned and trembling. What did he see? Tianyao Shengzi was slaped into the head by the fog, kneeling stiffly. Tianyao Shengzi's two old servants were smashed by Wushan's corpse and smashed out of the Enin star field. Is this too violent? Immediately afterwards, the Enin first disciple hit the spirit. Devent. Something big is coming. Mist Shuang, you are looking for death. The head of the sword was held by Jian Wushuang, and Tianyao Shengzi, who was kneeling down on the ground, twisted his extreme features to the extreme, and under the roar, he spurred all the imaginary forces in his body. Suddenly, the imaginary force in the heavenly sun's body resembles a whirlpool rotating at high speed, and a force sufficient to destroy the stars bursts out from his body, like a tide, rolling in, and the sword is unparalleled. Death's right hand on his head smashed open. Oh! Feeling the impact force from his hand, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but brow slightly. As the first day of the emptiness of the universe, the Prince of Yao Yao is proud of this skill. This force of impact is no less weak than the four-marked vagrants in terms of might. If Jian Wushuang hasn't broken the middle extreme, maybe he has to sit on the wax at this moment. But unfortunately, you are far from enough. With a cold hum, Jian Wushuang's right hand was full of blue tendons. He grabbed the head of Tianyao Shengzi and slammed it severely. He actually smashed the body of Tianyao Shengzi directly and threw it out of the wine hall. Seeing this scene, Jioshan couldn't help feeling a little sorrowful. Mist Shuang, after all, this person is the son of Tianyao Holy Land. If we do this, we won't cause you any trouble? Anyway. Jian Wushuang shook his head and stepped out, already appearing outside of the God Wine Pavilion, overlooking Tianyao Shengzi, who was smashed to the ground by him. The turmoil in the fighting between the two people immediately caught the attention of all the Yin Palace disciples inside and outside the Shinjio Pavilion. What? The son of Tianyao was thrown out? Who is so bold? How dare you do something to Tianyao Shengzi? For a moment, everyone was dismayed. Immediately, they saw a step out of the God Wine Pavilion, stepping in the void, expressionless swordless pair. It's him. New sovereign of the reincarnation? I remember that this person didn't break through the mark shortly before. How did he smash Tianyao Shengzi out? Who knows this? I guess it is a sneak attack. After all, Tianyao Shengzi is the first day in our universe. He is invincible in the same realm. What's wrong with this fog? It should not be Tianyao Shengzi's opponent. Everyone said one after another. Miss Double, despicable maggot, you it? In the Lord's wine, the expression of the holy son of Tianyao has been distorted to the extreme. The surging killing intentions almost condensed into substance and circulated in his eyes. He was born proud, no matter his family background, or his invincible luck and his ancient talents. He has developed a high-mindedness and does not put anyone in his eyes. When has he been so humiliated? A series of hatreds continued to wash in his body, and in a short moment, the eyes of Xingyao became flushed and anxious to destroy the sword unparalleled corpse. With a low roar, Tianyao Shengzi was full of light and killed toward the sword Wushuang. Jian Wushuang saw this, his expression was indifferent, and he calmly said, Mist said, hit you with one hand, hit you with one hand. Next moment, I saw Jian Wushuang's left hand behind him, his right hand condensed into a fist, and smash towards the heavenly sun. This fist can break the stars and the sun, and the mountains and rivers fall. Countless golden lights radiate from Jian Wushuang's right fist, as if pushing a round of rolling sun, like a golden carriage, driving out from the center of the sun, and ramming towards the sun of Tianyao. Click click. Under this punch, the whole void exudes the sound of a broken mirror, causing ripples. Rewind. Suddenly, many disciples of the Hades Palace who were watching the bustling life collapsed and flew directly to the cosmic starry sky. Boom! This punch was finally banged on the smashed Tianyao Xingzi. Moment. Tianyao Xingzi flew out at a faster speed than when he rushed, and the whole earth shook. But soon, in the sky of the Hades, a dark yellow mask appeared faintly, releasing the power of restraint and compressing the aftermath of the battle between the two as much as possible. Otherwise, with the sword Wushuang's fist, it is enough to blast the sun, and I am afraid that the aftermath of the scatter will be enough to disintegrate the entire Yin Palace. What? Mist Shuang, you should kill. Tianyao Xingzi climbed from the ground. Junlang's face was already full of twisted madness. His eyes turned into a bloodthirsty red. He killed the sword again. Stubbornness. Sword Wushuang shook his head, stepped out in one step, and suddenly appeared as if moving instantly, in front of Tianyao Xingzi. His right fist pounded out like a mad dragon, turning the surrounding 10 feet of land into a sea of tornadoes. Ha! The lines of the sword Wushuang's right fist flowed, and the sound of trembling on the road was emitted, like a giant axe that broke the ground and lay across the head of Tianyao Xingzi. Mr. Tianyao, right? Wu, teach you how to be a man today. Inside the main hall of the Hades, the lord of the Yin Palace, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly jumped. What happened? Open your eyes. Slowly the master of the Yin Palace looks up. Flip-flop. At that moment, a disciple of the Hades Palace hurriedly walked in with a complex expression. Master Gongzhu. The event is not good. Refining Shenzong's next ruler, Wu Shuang, fights with Tianyao Xingzi outside Shinjiu Pavilion. What? The main pupil of the Hades Palace shrunk slightly, and then the eyes moved quickly, and his gaze passed directly through the 9 nether void, and saw the scene where Jian Wushuang burst into the heavenly sun. Jack! Suddenly, the host of the Hades Palace had a pale face and a slight movement of his shoulders, and the whole person had disappeared into the hall. Chapter 45-21. God wine court outside. The sky was full of smoke. It is enough to destroy the galaxy and crush the stars, like a violent monster roaring in the roar, but has not waited for it to spread out, but it was stopped by the formation method in the Hades. Mist and mist. The iniquity of heaven is unforgivable, and the iniquity of man cannot live. You are looking for death. Tianyao Xingzi trembled and stood up from the ground. At this moment, his hair was loose, his nose and eyes were bleeding, and where he was half a minute ago, he looked like a saintly son. Instead, he was like a murderer who had been forced to death. However, his appearance was embarrassing, a magnificent and horrible, indescribable Xeon power, but it began to condense on him. A plume of smoke and thick red light began to condense in his chest, and its overflowing breath directly wiped out the surrounding starry sky and turned into a chaos. When the disciples in the Yin Palace who watched the battle saw this, they felt a chill in their hearts. No, it's false. Mr. Tianyao has lost his mind and is desperate. Block? What do you want to block? Hurry up and sue the palace master. Only the Master Palace Master can solve all this. Suddenly, the crowd watching the scene outside the Divine Wine Pavilion was panic-stricken. Is it false? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He has been in the Void Universe for some time. In his opinion, most of the Void Universe are almost the same as the Divine Universe. There is not much difference. The only thing worth mentioning is that every vicar in the Void Universe will some accompanying magical powers are exploding. The virtual explosion can instantly explode one's body up to 100 times the strength of the whole body. It is the virtual man of the virtual universe, the biggest killing move. Sorry, I do too. Next moment, Jian Wushuang raised his arm, spread his 5 fingers, and moved in the direction of Tianyao Xingzi. In his palm, the air machine began to rotate, just like a gyroscope. The speed of rotation was getting faster and faster. Boom! Finally, a small black vortex like a black hole emerged in the palm of the sword. The magical power of Jian Wushuang's whole body boiled up, and then he frantically gathered toward his palm, gradually forming a fist-sized black horror ball. Black burst. There is still black in the burst? The virtual explosion is divided into 7 grades. The lowest grade is white, the second grade is gold, and the third grade is purple. How many are black? How have you never heard of it? I don't know. But the power of compression in this black virtual explosion is terrible. It is even stronger than the Prince of Tianyao. The Prince of Tianyao is a 9-grade virtual explosion. Many disciples of the Hades Palace looked at this scene and said in amazement, "Is it black?" Jian Wu's eyes flickered. As early as when Jian Wushuang swallowed the nucleus of virtual power given to him by the elder Banshan, he awakened the virtual explosion, but for the first time since awakening for so long. As for the power, Jian Wushuang's heart is quite looking forward. Go die! Just then Tianyao Xingzi broke out first. The crimson sphere on his chest, like a cannonball, shot fiercely at Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, the air was overflowing, the earth was cracking, and the mask over the Yining Palace was like a bowl with an inverted buckle. Click click. Like a broken mirror, this guardian array that blocked all the mighty aftermaths made an unpleasant and broken sound. A trace of the air machine overflowed from the mask, shaking the whole Yining Palace violently. Just when Jian Wushuang also planned to perform a virtual explosion. Stop! A sound rang out 100 miles away, and then I saw a gurgling sound covered with bandages, stepping down, as if stepping out of ripples in the void, standing straight between Jian Wushuang and Tianyao Xingzi. A bandage burst, revealing dry, pale, gray palms. The master of the Yining Palace grabbed his right hand and directly grasped the blast from the Son of Heaven Yao, destroying all the horrible orbs. As if marbles fell into the hands, the exploding orb of the heavenly Son of Heaven fell into the palm of the Lord of the Nether Palace, a rapid rotation, and sparks of countless sparks. However, the palm of the Lord of the Yining Palace was just like a 9-day pouring of molten iron. No matter how powerful this explosive ball was, it still couldn't hurt the slightest. Finally, the speed of rotation gradually slowed down and was caught by the Lord of Yining. A breath of 6-marked virtual respect emanated from the main body of the Yining Palace. In this atmosphere, whether it is the Holy Son of Tianyao or the Sword Unparalleled, it is as small as an ant. 6 marks, or Invincible Supreme, is too big and different from other ranks of Vicious Supreme. It is not an order of magnitude at all. Jian Wushuang saw this, and the light of the eye moved slightly and regained the virtual explosive force that was ready to go. Master of the Hades, will you stop me for this, kid? However, Tianyao Xingzi kept on, turning his eyes and staring at the Lord of the Yining Palace. Ugh! The Lord of the Yining Palace sighed lightly. He is the one who stands on the side of the universe. He has 6 marks of vanity, and naturally he doesn't need to care too much about the Son of Heaven. But Tianyao Xingzi represents not only himself, but also the behemoth of Tianyao Holy Land behind him. Tianyao Holy Land, one of the most powerful and immortal dharmas of the Void Universe, has a history that almost completely extinguishes the entire Void Universe. Even if the Refining God sect and the Hades are merged, it is estimated that it will not be the opponent of the Tianyao Holy Land. And Tianyao Xingzi has amazing potential in itself, and he will certainly be able to sit on an equal footing with him in the future. If not helpless, he was really reluctant to come out to intervene in this muddy water. But he didn't come out, just afraid that the whole Hades would have to be destroyed. Holy Son, give the Lord of the Palace a face. How has this matter been revealed? The Lord of the Yining Palace said to Tianyao Xingzi. Tianyao Xingzi did not speak, but his face became gloomy. Although he is arrogant, he is not stupid. He is indeed very talented, and behind it stands the giant behemoth of Tianyao Holy Land. Don't look at the Lord of the Hades, who is polite to himself, but the son of Tianyao knows that he does not have the ability and qualification to be a 6-mark vanity. Go wild before you. After the lord of the Yin Palace finished speaking, he looked at Xiang Jianwashuang, and his face became a little blue. Miss Double Yao Huang, did that guy teach you to do things? I think you want to drag the refining gods to nowhere is evermore. Jian Wushuang heard nothing and shrugged. Mist Shuang, Ba Huang didn't leave, and it can still protect you for a few minutes, but if Ba Huang once leaves, when you really take charge of the refining deities, if you act like that, sooner or later, it will bring the disaster to the refining deities. The lord of the Yin Palace took a deep look at Jian Wushuang and said, this sentence, he came from the heart. Chapter 45-22 Kneel down. In the Divine Wine Pavilion's Sky Room No. 1. Everyone raised their cups and drank together. Under the seemingly harmonious scene, a trace of coldness could not be concealed. That's more like it. The Sky Glory Holy Sun looked at Jian Wushuang and Jiosha. They both drank the wine in their cups and smiled. The mortals in the world all say that we are immortals, but forget immortal, we are still human after all. I have an open personality all my life, uninhibited and wanton. I like the rivers, mountains, beauties, and wine in cups. This time, I'll make it clear that no one is allowed to use void energy to cleanse the alcohol, and we must drink it the natural way. You must accompany me to get drunk for 3,600 rounds. How about it? As soon as he said this, the head disciple of the Dark Yin Palace, Yin Shan, who was in charge of accompanying them, quickly added, the Holy Sun is right. This time, Lord Holy Sun has finally come to our Dark Yin Palace. We will definitely drink to our heart's content with you. Good. You're quite smart. The Sky Glory Holy Sun stretched out his hand and patted Yin Shan's head with a smile, as if he was petting a little dog wagging its tail. Then he raised his wine cup to Jiosha and said, come, Lady Jiosha, have another cup with me. Upon hearing this, a hint of hesitation flashed across Jiosha's already red face. This divine wine was made from the 100 brew fragrant fruit and was specially made for star-level void warriors to drink. She was only a star-level void warrior and had long been unable to hold her liquor. Jiosha wanted to refuse, but when she saw the Sky Glory Holy Sun's cold eyes, she was shaken. She had already figured out the identity of the young man in front of her. The current Holy Sun of the Sky Glory Holy Land, the Sky Glory Holy Sun. He was the #1 genius in the universe. The Sky Glory Holy Land was one of the strongest immortal orthodoxies in the Void universe. There was more than one 6-scar Void Master in the Holy Land. Although the God Refining sect was also one of the top forces, it was still far inferior to the Sky Glory Holy Land. This was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the God Refining sect master was about to step down and Jian Wushuang would be the new sect master. If she offended the Sky Glory Holy Sun, it would be equivalent to offending the Sky Glory Holy Land. At that time, not to mention how the Sky Glory Holy Land would suppress the God Refining sect, even the God Refining sect, with Jian Wushuang as the sect master, would be unable to do anything if they spread the word in the universe. Gulp. Thinking of this, Jiosha gritted her teeth, raised her glass, and drank it in one go. Suddenly, a flame seemed to burn in her body. Jiosha felt her blood boiling and her head spinning. She felt extremely uncomfortable. That's the way. The Sky Glory Holy Sun smiled in satisfaction and raised his glass again. I didn't expect Miss Jiosha's alcohol tolerance to be so good despite her low cultivation. Come, give me some face and have another cup. Seeing this, Jiosha finally could not help it. Her expression changed slightly, but she still forced a smile on her pretty face and said in a nice voice, Lord Holy Sun, I really can't drink anymore. You can't drink it? Hearing this, the Sky Glory Holy Sun's eyes slowly narrowed. The smile on his face disappeared, and his voice became cold. Lady Jiosha, it seems like you're not giving me any face? Upon hearing this, the smile on Jiosha's face froze. Lord Holy Sun, that's not what I meant. She was about to explain when the Sky Glory Holy Sun interrupted her and continued, Miss Jiosha, even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the sect behind you and for your sect master Wushuang, right? Upon hearing this, Jiao Sha's body trembled. This undisguised threat was already obvious. Jiao Sha looked at the expressionless and silent Jian Wushuang and could not help but laugh bitterly in his heart. From the beginning to the end, whether it was in the God-refining sect or outside, she was just a chess piece in the hands of the big shots. "I'll drink." Stretching out her trembling hand, Jiao Sha picked up the glass and was about to drink it. Seeing this, the Sky Glory Holy Sun's face once again had a warm smile as he nodded in satisfaction. Beside him, Yinshan also had an evil smile on his face. He knew very well what the Sky Glory Holy Sun wanted to do. But at this moment, Jiao Sha was holding a wineglass and was about to drink it when her right hand was grabbed by a large hand. A strong force came from this large hand, and she was unable to move. Jiao Sha raised her head in a daze and only saw Jian Wushuang's angular face, which was cold and indifferent. The next moment, Jian Wushuang said in a cold and deep voice, "Your face. I can fight 10 trash like you with one hand. Do you think you're worthy of talking about face in front of me?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was shocked. Yinshan's face was filled with shock. He did not expect that Wushuang from the God-refining sect would be so presumptuous. Did he know who the Sky Glory Holy Sun sitting in front of him was? How audacious! Yinshan slammed the table and wanted to teach this ignorant thing a lesson on behalf of the Sky Glory Holy Sun. He wanted to take credit and show off. However, before he could do anything, Jian Wushuang's divine light grew and he looked at him. In an instant, Yinshan felt a great horror of life and death coming at him. Jian Wushuang's cold eyes were like 2 divine swords that could split the sky and earth and tear the endless sky apart. He felt like he was pierced and killed thousands of times. Yinshan fell to the ground on his butt. A chill ran from his back to his head, making him feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. When he looked again, his entire back was already drenched in a cold sweat. The smile on the Sky Glory Holy Sun's face froze, and his face slowly darkened. "Wushuang, even your sect master doesn't dare to speak to me like this. Are you seeking death? Kneel down and apologize. Give your maidservant to me, and I'll take your words as frivolous and drunken words. I won't take it to heart." After saying that, the Sky Glory Holy Sun stood up and looked down at Jian Wushuang. However, just as he got up, his body was still not straight. "I kneel." Jian Wushuang sneered and activated his Chaos Overlord body. He suddenly stretched out his right hand and smacked the Sky Glory Holy Sun's head. "You kneel." Rumble! Endless power burst out from Jian Wushuang's palm. The Sky Glory Holy Sun felt as if 1,000,000 mountains were pressing down on him. He knelt on the ground, and his knees left a web of cracks on the ground. As far as Jian Wushuang was concerned, as long as he was not an invincible supreme, no one could defeat him. The Sky Glory Holy Sun was only at the 3-scar level. He was even inferior to Luo Ming, the chief of the Crimson Whale Gang. How would he dare to be impudent in front of him? "Young master." "Lord Holy Sun." The 2 old slaves guarding the door of the private room were furious. Just as they were about to charge at Jian Wushuang said indifferently, "Taro." A crack appeared in the void behind Jian Wushuang. The divine corpse of Taro, who was covered in a large black robe, took a step forward and stretched out his hands to attack the 2 old slaves. Chapter 45-23. Ill Wait. Welcome to Refining God Sovereign Wushuang. Welcome to the Refining God Sovereign Wushuang. Suddenly, the whole square of Refining Godzong was boiling, and tens of thousands of practitioners of Refining Godzong fell to the ground and shouted in unison. The sound of the sword unparalleled is greeted by the sound of billowing sounds, resounding through the whole refining deities. At this moment, the sword is unparalleled, and it has been replaced with a lord's robe. He has a beautiful face and a cold eyebrow, but he exudes a sense of calmness like a prison, which makes people feel indignant. Especially those eyes, which are extremely sharp and dazzling, make people dare not look straight. "Get up." Jian Wushuang looked indifferent, holding his right hand up. Suddenly, tens of thousands of disciples stood up. The ascension ceremony of the refining god sect was gradually ended in the congratulations of Wanchao. After embarrassing each other's forces who came today, Jian Wushuang personally bid farewell to them. Among them, the face of the Lord of the Underworld Palace has not been very good-looking, and before Jian Wushuang went to give him away, he gave a cold hum, leaving Shenzong. After that, it was the arrangement before Bahuang Shuzuan left. In the Lord's Hall, there were only two men, Jian Wushuang and Bahuang Xuanzun. I think this is my seat. I was sitting here for the last time. Bahuang Shuozhen sat on the throne that only the prince could sit on, with his hands resting on the black gold armrests, and his thumbs slightly rubbed against the fine lines on the armrests, with a slight emotion. Jian Wushou stood beside him, bowed his head silently, and said nothing. Mr. Shuang, I haven't had much contact with you. The impression you give to this suzerain is that you are a well-thought-out and profound mansion. This is a good thing, but it is also a bad thing. This seat can have a faint feeling what seems to be hidden in your heart, but this thing is unpredictable and inconceivable. This seat is not someone who breaks the casserole and asks to the end. This seat only hopes that, no matter what, you have taken over the seat of this seat and become the sovereign of the sect of refining God, then everything is best to focus on the interests of the sect and personal interests. Don't make the point of bringing the sacred God to the abyss. To be honest, Yen Dan is inferior to you in terms of patience and instinct, but if Yen Dan does not die, this seat will still pass the position of suzerain to Yen Dan. Bahuang Shuzuan slowly said that it was the first time to push his heart with Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang silently said nothing but sighed. After he joined the refining god sect, whether it is the Lord of the Refining God or Elder Moose Wind, he has a good impression on him. It's just a pity that they were destined to stand on the opposite side and meet each other in the future. By that time, what kind of scene should Jian Wushuang face in the battlefield outside the field with the 8 desolates? Bahuang Shuzuan did not want Jian Wushuang to answer, but continued to say, Mr. Shuang, this time this place is going to be the mission of this seat. It is extremely dangerous, and it is very likely that it will never come back. Therefore, please take care of the Shenzong for me. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded. The next day. It was still early in the morning, and Bahuang Shuzuan left the refining Shenzong with the white-haired and burly old man. Under the gate of Lian Shenzong Mountain, Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes as he looked at the departure of Bahuang Shuzuan and the white-haired burly old man. In the end, these 8 desolate lords left him a hand, and did not explain the matter of the void, and at the same time, Jian Wushuang also believed that the essence of the refining divine sect would never be so simple. Still have to fumble on your own. The sword murmured to himself. At this time, an excited voice sounded in Jian Wushuang's mind. Young master, we have discovered something new. Oh! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrow and did not rush to respond, but flashed in his eyes, and walked towards the Sovereign Hall again. Master Sovereign! See Lord Sovereign! The 2 disciples in charge of guarding the gate of the mountain rushed down on their knees and said respectfully, Well, bullish on Shanmen. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, then stepped out and straight into the sky. Countless lands shrunk under the swordless feet. Within a few breaths, Jian Wushuang fell into the Sovereign's hall in one step. Inside the main hall, some servants who were responsible for serving the suzerain were cleaning the main hall of the suzerain. When he saw the sword entering, he immediately knelt down. Go out. Sword Wushuang faintly spoke. Yes. These servants retreated. He waved his hand to close the heavy gate of the sovereign's hall, and the swordless figure turned around and entered the palace that only the sovereign lord could enter. In the dormitory, there are many books, which are the secrets of the refining god sect, and secretaries of various methods of corpse refining. In the middle, there is a yin and yang gossip array, innumerable powers and corpses, emerging from the center of the array. Swordless sat down cross-legged, silently began to absorb these weak forces. With that crystal of virtual power, Jian Wushuang's body is equivalent to an extra conversion machine, which can convert all absorbed divine power into virtual power. This yin and yang gossip array under Jian Wushuang not only controls the great ancestors of the Lian Shenzong, but also absorbs all the corpses and power of the Manzong. In other words, that is, Jian Wushuang sat on the front line of this yin and yang gossip array, and the entire power and corpse of the refining Shenzong were instilled in him alone. What a horrible amount! However, Jian Wushuang was not in a hurry to start the map at this moment, but connected the rumor with Luo Ming, the head of the Red Whale Gang. You say it carefully. Sword Wushuang faintly spoke. Observe. Luo Ming's voice excitedly said, Young master, our Red Whale Gang is responsible for staring at the congregations of the major top forces to discover that in the past few days, those top leaders in charge of the Patriarch, or the ancient elders who have been falling asleep, have all recovered. After that, we all rushed towards the void. And in the void, we found that Gu Heng Su Zun and others were unable to retreat and all shrank. This must be a major event soon. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and suddenly his eyes rose sharply by 3 inches. Look at this, is the second Holocaust going to start soon? Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, I see. Last time I asked you to prepare a map and mark of the void forbidden area. Are you ready? Master Hui Hui, the map was all drawn the day before yesterday. Luo Ming nodded hard and replied. Okay, you send the people to the refining god sect. Remember, this person must be your brother-in-law, who was planted by me that day. Jian Wushuang nodded and replied. Small, understand and arrange it immediately. Luo Ming hurried back. Well, you can arrange it, and then if anything happens, you will contact me as soon as possible. After commanding this sentence, Jian Wushuang cut off the subpoena. Chapter 45-24. Inside the Lord's dormitory. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on the yin and yang gossip array, his eyes twinkling. It seems that the second catastrophe won't take long to begin, and I must increase my strength by 1 step before the catastrophe begins. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and muttered to himself. Although the horror of this catastrophe, Jian Wushuang has never experienced it, but he has also heard from the gods of the universe and others. The tragedy of this catastrophe can hardly be described in any words. In the catastrophe, the supremacy is like an ant, and it will fall between the clouds and hands. Only at least the Supreme will be able to protect itself. That is the invincible stage. Only Invincible Supreme can kill the quartet in the catastrophe without fear. But even the Invincible Supreme is in danger of falling. At least in the last catastrophe, just the divine power universe, the fallen Invincible Supremacy will not have fewer hands. And the current strength of Jian Wushuang, the sky is the strongest combat power below the Invincible Supremacy. Away from the true Invincible Supremacy, there is always a gap. Matrix Kai. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and urged the yin and yang gossip array. Suddenly, the lines on the yin and yang gossip arrays flooded with countless white lights. Then I saw that the yin and yang gossip arrays began to rotate. Rotating, a frantic influx came, pouring everything into Jian Shuang's body. The pure and vast virtual force almost burst the sword Wushuang almost in an instant. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang is a super-perfect life with amazing capacity and a chaotic domineering body. Swallow! Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed, and suddenly he turned into a giant beak with a wide mouth, and swallowed up a vast amount of virtual power. Boom boom! Jian Wushuang's whole body made a roar like a thunderous thunder. Subsequently, these majestic force was transformed into pure divine power after being refined. Jian Wushuang's whole body breath began to skyrocket. There was silence in the Lord's Hall. Without the command of swordless warriors, no one dared to step in. After 3 months, Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes, and an extremely thick light flashed from his eyes. 3 months of practice, the increase in divine power is more than I usually practice for 3,000 years. Jian Wushuang lowered his head and opened his mouth to himself. During these 3 months, almost all the power of refining Shenzong was absorbed and refined by Jian Wushuang alone. The state of the middle extreme has not only completely stabilized in these 3 months, but also only 1 step to reach the peak of the middle extreme. What a horrible speed is this! If he hadn't received a message from Luo Ming of the Red Whale Gang, telling the disciples of the Red Whale Gang who had sent the map of the Void Forbidden Land that they had arrived at the Refining God sect. Jian Wushuang would continue to practice at least, and he would sprint to the extreme peak. Taro! Sword Wushuang faintly spoke. A black-robed figure suddenly emerged from the shadow behind Jian Wushuang. Immediately, Jian Wushuang issued an instruction to allow the body of Tai Luo to sit on the yin and yang gossip array. A lot of corpse gas was poured into the corpse of Tai Luo God. Originally, due to the blow of Tai Su God Emperor, the corpse of Tai Luo God could only rely on time to gradually recover from the injury, and it quickly improved. Not only that, the breath of Tai Luo's corpse also began to become strong, and gradually moved towards the middle supreme. The next step is to raise Taro's corpse to the middle and supreme realm. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and immediately opened the gate of the Lord's palace and strode out. Master Sovereign! The two disciples in charge of the door were already in a daze. When they saw Jian Wushuang stepping out, they couldn't help but stunned and hurriedly kneeled down to salute. Jian Wushuang pointed at their jaws slightly, and the arc of the nod was almost negligible. It was a response, and then stepped out again, which had disappeared at the gate of the Sovereign Hall. Hello, have you noticed that Wu Shuang is becoming more and more powerful, which makes people feel particularly unfathomable and dare not offend? After Jian Wushuang left, a disciple in charge of guarding the gate whispered, "What does it mean that there is more and more momentum of the suzerain? Wushuang is the suzerain, okay? But you are right in saying this, you do and know, just when the suzerain looked at me just now, I felt cold as if I were there is no secret in front of the Lord." The other disciple glanced at the disciple who spoke earlier, and then whispered the same. Well, we have all been guarding this master for 30 million years. We are still gatekeepers. How long did it take for Wushuang to become a master? And the gap between people is really too big. The disciple who spoke before said with emotion. Lian Shenzong outside the gate. A person with a sharp-billed monkey gill was hurriedly walking back and forth in front of the gate of the Shenzong mountain, scratching his ears. Well, didn't I say that? I'm here to find Master Wushuang. Let me in. This person is naturally the person Luo Ming came to be responsible for sending the Void Forbidden map. But looking at it this way, this person seems to have encountered some trouble. Shut up. Wushuang is our sovereign lord who practiced Shenzong. How can you call it out? How can you become the young master of people like you? The two young disciples in charge of guarding the mountain gate frowned suddenly, scolding. Hurry up and go, you have sharp-mouthed monkey gills, green peas with small eyes, and a ghostly whereabouts. You are not a good person at first glance. If you still don't leave, don't blame us for killing you. Another disciple disdained. The Red Whale Gang helped everyone to hear this and immediately laughed. Grandma, Lao Tzu's long crooked melon is not good? The anger flickered in his eyes, and the red whale, who really looked crooked, helped his disciples sing, and thought silently, if it weren't for our young master's dojo, our family would have to kill you two little dolls today. Take a deep breath. This red whale helped the crowd to suppress their tempers, and said with a smile, "Two, please be troublesome, go with the young master. No, go with your suzerain adult whistle. Well, why aren't you guys getting into the oil and salt? It seems you really want to be killed by us?" The two Lian Shenzong raised their eyebrows and rolled up their sleeves to prepare for an attack. Well, the two of you back down. Just then, a bland voice sounded behind them. After hearing the words, the two disciples turned their heads and looked back. After seeing the people clearly, their faces suddenly changed, and they fell down on the ground in a sincere and fearful manner. Disciple Disciple see the waves, see Lord Suzerain. Little Crazy 3, meet the young master. Chapter 45-25. Let's all get up. Jian Wushuang raised his hand towards the three. Suddenly, the two disciples in charge of the janitor and the madman of the Red Whale Gang all stood up in congratulations. The two of you continue to guard the gate, you follow me. Jian Wushuang instructed 2 sentences, and even if he took the Red Whale Gang's gang members Crazy 3, walked towards the Sovereign Hall. Okay. The Mad 3 smirked and immediately glared at the 2 disciples in charge of guarding the mountain gate. Then they followed behind Jian Wushuang and flew towards the main hall of the sovereign. Looking at the back of Jian Wushuang and Feng San, the two disciples guarding Shan Men could not help but glance at each other. That guy just knew the Lord. Looking like this, the suzerain is outside, there seems to be other forces. Back at the sovereign's hall, the servants responsible for cleaning were swung back again. Jian Wushuang turned and sat on the main seat, and said, "Crazy 3, give me a map of the forbidden area." "Okay." Mad 3 responded with a sneer at first, and then groped, pulling out a roll of jade tube from the cuff and handing it to Jian Wushuang. "Small master, the labels and maps above are all small ones to go to the actual measurement and then write and draw them. Basically, there will be no errors, you see." "It is good." Jian Wushuang nodded his head, took the jade tube and spread it out. His eyes flashed suddenly. "I saw the map of the void forbidden area depicted on this jade tube is extremely fine. There are 99 void cracks, all marked clearly. After that, every void crack in the void forbidden station by the caretaker, and each mountain ranges, all accurately portrayed. It can be said that there is nothing more meticulous than this map of the void. 87 void cracks in the ground are highlighted, and a red tick is drawn and the word unknown is written. Want to come to this crazy 3 is not able to enter the 87th void cracks, but the sword is unparalleled understandable, naturally will not be difficult." Jian Wushuang continued to look back, but actually found a long list of names and detailed notes. Written in the first, it is the Gu Heng Su Zun that Luo Ming told him the last time. Gu Heng Su Zun, who became famous before 30,000 Suji, was repaired to 6 marks when the universe disappeared and was good at using moves. The 9-fingered emperor, who became famous before the 50,000 virtual eras, was modified to 6 marks when the universe disappeared and was good at using moves. This is... Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed, and he looked up at this crazy 3. Crazy 3 quickly replied, "Back to the young master, this is some of the sense of vanity found by the Red Whale Gang in the void cracks, and then distinguish their identity, although not perfect, but it should be probably located in the void forbidden land. Number of vanity counts." Jian Wushuang heard nothing and said nothing, but in his heart, there was a tsunami, and he couldn't help showing joy. This list is too important. It is entirely possible to use this list, coupled with the recent trends of the top powers, to speculate that this time the Holocaust battle, the power of the virtual force universe, let the magical force universe deploy early. Snapped. Closing this bamboo tube, Jian Wushuang looked at Crazy 3, his eyes showed appreciation, and he said, "You are good." When he heard this, Mad 3 immediately felt a joy in his heart, and quickly sneered, "It's all a small thing as long as the young master is satisfied." Subsequently, the two said a few words. Jian Wushuang sent away Crazy 3, let him continue staring at the forbidden ground. After Mad 3 left, Jian Wushuang sat on the throne alone, his eyes flashing for a while. "Now that the war of catastrophe is about to begin, I have to go back to the divine universe myself, and convey the news to the of the universe, so that the divine universe can prepare for it early. However, there are 2 problems that make it difficult to go back. Now that he has just taken office soon, there must be many eyes watching him. If he leaves now, he will not show up for a long time, and he will inevitably be speculated and suspected. Second, Jian Wushuang didn't know how to return to the divine universe. According to this bamboo tube map, when I left the divine universe and entered the void universe, the void crack that appeared was the 23rd, and that's why it was NT really strong in the beginning. The men met because they all gathered in the 87th void. From this calculation, in addition to the 87 voids, which can travel back and forth to the virtual force universe, the 23rd voids can also travel back and forth. However, all these are just my calculations. If there is a slight difference, it will be a disaster. Jian Wushuang pressed and rubbed his brow, thinking continuously. Whether the calculation is correct or not can only be known by going to the void for a while. Besides that, this is the first question: how should God leave the refining consciously without being suspected? Thinking silently, Jian Wushuang frowned gradually. After a moment, the light flashed in his eyes. As if something had been thought of, his eyes flickered sharply. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stood up and walked towards the Lord's palace. Inside the palace, there are countless mysteries and books. Jian Wushuang then pulled out a book and flipped it up. After a moment, he replugged the mystery into the bookshelf and stepped towards the position of Taro's corpse. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on the back of Taro's corpse, stretched out his palms and pressed it on the back of Taro's corpse. Boom! Suddenly, countless virtual forces poured out of the sword without hands and irrigated into the body of the corpse of Tai Luo. Suddenly, a weird scene happened. I saw that the shape of Tai Luo's corpse changed rapidly, the tall and burly figure had become thinner, and the stiff and numb face had a little more glory and ruddy. His facial features suddenly changed slightly, but turned into a sword unparalleled appearance. In a short span of time, 2 swords unparalleled appeared in the Lord's palace. Not only is the appearance the same, but even the breath comes from one body. Even if the person closest to Jian Wushuang is standing here, there is absolutely no way to tell which one is www. Novel. The deity. The corpse of Tai Luo stood up, competing as if he had come alive, with a smile on his face, and bent towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang saw this and nodded in satisfaction. The secretary he just looked at is the technique of reincarnation. Infiltrate the corpse of God with his own heart into his consciousness and breath, so that he becomes an avatar. Once in the refining deities, there were many big limits coming, and the disciples who were about to fall used this secret technique to make themselves equal to the rebirth in disguise. This mystery is more domineering than the ordinary mystery of external avatars. For example, the sword is unparalleled, and it can simply give instructions to make it free to move. And he can instantly transfer all his consciousness to this corpse of Tai Luo, making it his second life. Chapter 45-26. Inside the Lord's dormitory. The 2 swords, identical and with the same breath, stood alone and looked very weird. Here you are, looking after the refining God for me. Jian Wushuang stood up, looked at the corpse of Tai Luo, and said lightly, "Okay, even though the deity is gone, I will definitely be optimistic about the refining deities here." The sword Wushuang, transformed by the corpse of Tai Luo, smiled back. "Okay." Jian Wushuang nodded and strode away from the palace. That night, Jian Wushuang went to the place where the Elder Banshan was, and let the Elder Banshan take care of the refining Shinzong 1 or 2. When the Elder Banshan heard that Jian Wushuang was about to return to the divine universe, he froze for a moment, and those dull eyes flashed a dim look. If not helpless, who would like to leave and leave? Jian Wushuang, you go. This seat will take good care of Lian Shinzong. After taking a deep breath, Elder Banshan suppressed the throbbing in his heart, and Xin Xing said, "Then there is more trouble for Elder Banshan." Jian Wushuang took a deep look at Elder Banshan and nodded. After that, Jian Wushuang walked out of the palace where the Elder Banshan was. When stepping at the door, Jian Wushuang paused for a moment, without turning back, and said softly, "Be patient for a moment or two, until the end of the Holocaust. I will wait for the true return to the universe." "It is good." A smile appeared on Elder Banshan's face. After Jian Wushuang left, Elder Banshan looked up and looked through the ceiling to Woody Void. "Old man. I look forward to that day." Lian Shinzong Mountain Gate. They are still the 2 disciples of Refining God sect, responsible for guarding the gate. Well, it's so boring. It will be another 100 years until the next rotation. The disciple on the left complained. "Haha, if you have any complaints, tell your suzerain." The disciple on the right answered with a smile. The 2 were in a gag, but didn't feel so bored. Well, at this moment, the 2 of them suddenly felt dark, like a shadow, passing by. A slight gusty wind blew their clothing corners. What just happened? The disciple on the left rubbed his eyes, and looked around in confusion, but saw nothing. "It seems to be blowing the field." The disciple on the right answered with a shrug. Afterwards, the 2 of them left everything behind, and continued to snoring. At the same time, in the star field outside the Refining God sect, he struck wide black robe, wearing a hood, blocking most of his face, only showing his chin, and glanced back at Lian Shenzong and strode away. I saw that his initial speed was not fast, but step by step, and in the end he had torn through the vast sky like a horizontal thunder and burst into the void forbidden. At the same time, outside the forbidden area in the void, 87th crack. A solemn ceremony is being held in a rainforest. I saw countless white bones stacked together, like jingguan, forming a high base. Each white bone was carved with a mysterious pattern, exuding a monstrous evil spirit. On the high platform, a bare-haired, white-haired, burly old man, holding 3 pillars of long incense in his hand, was constantly inserted in the gap between the white bone and the white bone. Below this platform, more than a dozen men and women wearing black robes with solemn faces stood respectfully. If at this time the strong man of the virtual universe saw these black-robed men, he would be shocked and look horrified. Because these more than 10 hypo people, all of them have once set foot on the peak of the virtual universe, overlooking all beings, and have an arbitrary existence. Each of them has a glorious past, and each of them once passed through an era, but in the end they all disappeared silently into the long river of time. Unexpectedly at this moment, they were all together. Wisps of intangible air radiated from them, and all of them rushed towards the high platform. On the high platform, the white-haired burly old man, after filling the black long incense in his hand, put on a bronze mask on his face, holding a black wooden staff in his hand, and started to whine. Beat up. Alas! The sky seemed to be towed and began to spin quickly. The fumes of the scent of long incense rushed straight into the sky. Great Lord, your people? Did you feel our calling? Wake up, your people need your protection. The white-haired burly old man looked at the sky and thought. At the beginning, the voice was still weak, but it was higher and higher, until the end, his voice burst like a thunder. Wake up! Boom! There was a huge explosion in the sky. At this moment, the sky cracked. A terrifying atmosphere, rolling along with the black smoke, spread out from the cracked sky, like a magical. This breath of horror is far from being incomparable to the invincible supreme. It is simply enough to tremble all eternity, kneeling in heaven and earth, and the heavenly man will bow his head. Master Xian Shen. Suddenly, the white-haired burly old man burst into ecstasy and excitement, kneeling suddenly. Beneath the high platform, the 10 or so peaking powerhouses who once asserted themselves had the same joy on their faces, kneeling towards the sky. Master Xian Shen. The magical mist of the sky was flying, and on the torn sky, an extremely ancient and deep voice came out. I wake up and push all enemies in the world. God of God, wait for me. At the same time, entrance to another location in the void. A black-robed figure was moving fast. Suddenly, what's the situation? Jian Wushuang's footsteps stopped fiercely. An immense, ancient, and terrifying breath came from the other side of Skyrim, which actually made him almost kneel. This breath just made him feel a point, and Han Mao stood upright, and a big terror between life and death surged in his heart. That location is the 87 crack. What happened there? Jian Wushuang's face was startled, and he lifted his eyes to look at the 87 crack. However, the other side was covered by a monstrous black magic mist, and Rao is the sword's magical power in his eyes, which cannot be seen. You have to hurry up. I'm afraid that this world war, the chaos of the chaos, will come faster than I thought. Jian Wushuang bit his teeth, which was extremely fast, and once again skyrocketed, and the whole person flashed into the void for a moment like the passing streamer. At the 23rd crack, the Ram Supreme, who had had a messenger with him, was already waiting there. Seeing Jian Wushuang flying, the Ram Supreme face was ugly, and he stepped forward and said, Jian Wushuang, did you just feel that horrible breath? Jian Wushuang nodded his face solemnly and said, let's go back to the divine universe first and report these things to the of the universe. Chapter 45-27. 87th crack. The call to sacrifice continued, and an overwhelming amount of pressure spread out. At the 23rd crack, Jian Wushuang and the Ram Supreme stepped forward and stepped into the crack. Click and wipe. The crack in the void twisted, devouring the figure of Jian Wushuang and the Ram Supreme, and then they disappeared. The familiar sense of dizziness struck again. When Jian Wushuang and the Ram supremely opened their eyes again, they had reached the starry sky. The same starry sky, but the atmosphere in the universe is already different. Jian Wushuang and the Ram Supreme glanced at each other, and there was a movement in each other's heart. Sure enough, in addition to the 87th crack, this 23rd crack can also go back and forth between the divine universe and the virtual universe. The two were about to walk towards the camp of the gods. A shout rang suddenly. "Strange thief, die!" Boom! I saw a six-claw white dragon, rushing through the clouds and driving fast. In his mouth, there was a huge fireball flame, as if the sun was in his mouth. "Stop!" The Ram's supreme face changed suddenly, and then they remembered that the two had just emerged from the cracks in the void, and they must have been treated by others as virtual universes. However, he hadn't waited for his explanation. The fireball had already slammed into the sky, hitting a broken channel directly in the void, and hit the sword Wushuang and the Ram Supreme straight. This fireball, just the spread of coercion and hot temperature, is far from being able to resist by the Ram. Just as the Ram Supreme faced despair, the sword Wushuang next to him stepped out, holding the hilt of the Taro Excalibur at the waist. Sword to cut. A shocking match of puppets, like a long galaxy, slashed away and split the big fireball in half. Countless flames spread, reflecting the faces of Jian Wushuang and the Supreme Ram. Alas! Put away the Taro magic sword. Sword Wushuang looked up and looked into the giant dragon eye, and flashed the dreaded six-claw white dragon, calmly said, "Long Qing, I haven't seen you in such a long time. I still think you are so stupid and stupid." Click click. The tens of thousands of long, six-clawed white dragons flickered with white awns, and immediately turned into a young man wearing a white robe with gold edges and a pair of horns. Sword unparalleled? Long Qing narrowed his eyes and hummed softly. The sword is unparalleled, and the pointed ears are restored to their original shape, transforming a virtual force into a divine power and turning it back into a true human race. This guy didn't die in the void universe. Also, this guy seems to be stronger again. Long Qing's eyes flashed with surprise. This time Jian Wushuang entered the virtual universe. In addition to the gods knowing the specific situation, as for the other disciples, even the two disciples of the gods are not clear about the specific situation of Jian Wushuang and others in the virtual universe. Therefore, Long Qing thought that the sword was unparalleled, and he had long been killed in the virtual universe. Rumble. After that, several figures came in a mighty manner. After seeing Jian Wushuang, he suddenly felt a stunned look, with unbelievable colors in his eyes. Is sword unparalleled? Jian Wushuang returned from the virtual universe? Jian Wushuang is still the first person to return from the virtual universe? Everyone was shocked. Jian Wushuang frowned, ignored them, and said indifferently, "Excuse me." After that, Jian Wushuang and the Ram Supreme turned into two streamers, which instantly cut through the sky and swept towards the base camp where the gods of the universe were. This time, the reason why Jian Wushuang did not choose to communicate with the gods of the universe, but came back in person because it was important, such as the map of the void and the deployment of combat power, and the Elder Banshan spent tens of thousands of Chaos Period collections. The information must be handed to the of the universe, and the sword can be reassured without both sides. After a few hours, the base camp has arrived. I haven't seen it for hundreds of years. There is no difference in the base camp, except that it has become more dignified. The people responsible for patrolling the base camp are full of expressions. When they think about it, they also guess what will happen in the war. Sword Wushuang approached. The monk responsible for guarding the base camp was preparing to intercept, and after seeing the arrival clearly, he suddenly asked in amazement, "You are Vice Captain Jian Shuang? Are you back from the virtual universe?" Jian Wushuang looked at this person, and saw that this man was wearing the 7th team's robes. It was a member of the 7th team. When Jian Wushuang fought for 5,000 years, this man also fought alongside him. "It's me." Jian Wushuang nodded his head, without meaning of nonsense, and said, "Take me to see Elder God." The 7th team player saw Jian Wushuang's grim expression, understands that the matter must be urgent, and quickly took Jian Wushuang to the Temple of God. Along the way, many eyes looked at Jian Wushuang one after another, startled with suspicion, and then they were shocked. Jian Wushuang is back. He is back from the virtual universe. Ignoring these discussions, Jian Wushuang stepped into the temple hall of the Elder God. In the temple god's hall, the old-fashioned god is wearing a large salamander and is reading a book. Lan Lan and Lan Su stand on both sides and hold the lamp for him. Hearing the footsteps, God looked up and saw Jian Wushuang coming in. There was no surprise on his face, but a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, nodding, "You are here." Waved his hand, he motioned Lan Su and Lan Lan to retreat on both sides. "Yes." Lan Su and Lan Lan answered each other, and when they passed by, they looked at Jian Wushuang with similar surprises. After the two left, the whole hall was suddenly left with only two gods, Wushan. Master Elder God. Jian Wushuang arched his hand toward the of the earth. "You and I don't need to be polite." The Zhou put down the book in his hand and patted the position next to him, motioning to Jian Wushuang to sit next to him. "You worked hard during this time." Zhou God looked at the vicissitudes of Jian Wushuang's eyes and sighed lightly. Somehow distressed. Jian Wushuang sat next to the of the universe, and smiled when he heard it with the phrase of the of universe, "Everything was worth it." God knows that his sword Wushuang is in the refining Shinzong, seemingly calm, but in fact he tightens his mind every day, dare not be half relaxed, for fear of the risk of his own exposure. The effort it takes is simply incalculable. "Sir Master, please look at these two things first." Converging his thoughts, Jian Wushuang's right hand, a map of the forbidden area, a list of combat power, and the bamboo tube entrusted to him by Zhan Shan all appeared in his hands. It is good. There is no unnecessary nonsense in the of the universe, and he understands that a war is about to begin. He first lifted the bamboo tube of Banshan and looked carefully. In the temple of the gods, the candlelight swayed for a while, the of the gods slowly looked, his eyebrows gradually wrinkled. Chapter 45-28. In the hall of the cosmic god, there was a silence. The god of the god looked down and read the news that it took tens of thousands of virtual periods in Banshan before collecting the news. The frowns became more and more tight, and his face was not very good-looking. Jian Wushuang sat silently without questioning. Needless to say, he also knows that there must be some bad news in this bamboo tube. Otherwise, the Zhou would not be so heavy. A moment later, after reading a roll of bamboo tube, the Zhou looked up at the sky and sighed for a long time. Rubbing his eyebrows, God of the Golem continued to look through the map of the forbidden land in the void. Immediately after opening the map, the of the face, who was still quite heavy, raised his eyebrows immediately. "What's this?" He looked sideways at Jian Wushuang. Sword Wushuang replied, "Master God, this is a map of the void forbidden land opposite the void universe, and the void forbidden land is the entrance to our magical universe." "Is that so?" Lord Elder God nodded. After reading the map all the time, there was no change in the look of Zhou God, until he saw the calculation of the imaginary universe combat power at the back. His eye-man skyrocketed, and his face showed a touch of joy. "Okay, this calculation of the combat power is too timely." Zhou God turned to look at Jian Wushuang, and there was a gleam in his eyes, full of appreciation. He naturally understood the importance of this thing. With this list of combat power calculations, he can definitely make arrangements for the future of the catastrophe and make a corresponding plan for each of the 6 mark and above powerhouses. What's the scariest? The unknown is the most terrifying. Now, with this list of combat effectiveness, it is tantamount to understand the details of the virtual universe. I didn't expect that after the first universe had experienced the void universe, it still has such rich heritage, and there are still so many invincible and supreme existences in the universe. After laying down this list of maps, the god of Zhou made a sound. The number of 6 marked virtual respects recorded on this list alone exceeds the number of hands. He believes that this is only part of it, and there are certainly many 6 mark vanities, which are not recorded on it. Jian Wushuang, The old man has a request. Zhou God turned to look at Jian Wushuang. Master Zhou God said this seriously, if there is anything I need, just ask. Jian Wushuang calmed his face and replied seriously. Okay. God of Nod nodded, and then replied. Sword Wushuang, when you return to the virtual universe, be sure to make all the 6 marks of the virtual universe that can be clearly recorded and not fallen, as the last give me a detailed list. These people will most likely participate in this catastrophe. No problem. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, which was not difficult for him. The words turned. Jian Wushuang seemed to remember something. His expression gradually became serious, and he said, Yes, Lord God, I encountered an unexpected situation when I returned to the divine universe. Oh, what happened? With a brow at the head of the Zhou, Jian Wushuang's expression was so serious that it was certainly not a trivial matter. Immediately, Jian Wushuang would tell thee of the atmosphere that he felt in the void forbidden ground. After speaking, the Spirit of God in the eyes of the suddenly soared by 3 inches, and always had a sharp look on his peaceful face. Jian Wushuang, if I'm not mistaken, the breath you feel in the forbidden space should be a vanity. Virtual God? Jian Wushuang heard a word. Yes. The god of Nod nodded and said, The false is the initiator of the last catastrophe, and it is also the strongest existence of the virtual universe. Even the old man dare not say that he should stabilize him. It was fortunate that the battle of the Holocaust was based on our divine universe. The virtual gods in our universe will be suppressed by the law of the avenue, and their strength will be weakened. Therefore, the old man could only defeat him seriously. Do you remember the last black arm you encountered on the extraterrestrial battlefield? The Zhou asked. Of course I remember. Jian Wushuang nodded. That was his first battle after he came here, and Jiao Xingzi died in that battle, naturally impressed. Today's sword unparalleled. Compared to that time, it has naturally improved, and the realm has reached the middle extreme, but when his dark arm covering the sky, he still feels a cold back. That was not at all a horror with him in one dimension. The master of this black arm is an imaginary god. From that day on, the old man knew that this guy was about to wake up and the catastrophe would come again. Unfortunately, no matter how old the man is, he also thought that the virtual would need at least thousands of times of chaos to be truly awake, free from restraint, and return to the world. But according to what you said, I'm afraid of the gods. I'm awake now. Speaking of which, there was a gleam of cold light in the eyes of Zhou God. Is it so fast? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's breathing felt a little rushed. An imminent sense of urgency surged in Jian Wushuang's heart. Sword unparalleled, it seems our pace is going to accelerate. The god took a deep breath and said, We must get Feng Tianqi, one of the patriarchs, before the war of catastrophe begins. As long as Feng Tianqi is in hand, we will have a chance to win after the start of the Holocaust. Otherwise the crusade of the virtual universe can advance and retreat and defend, which is difficult for us to deal with. And as long as Feng Tianqi is in your hands, you can enter the virtual universe, insert Feng Tianqi into the void, and completely block their retreat. At that time, under the suppression and exclusion of the law of the avenue, the old man will have confidence to lead our magical universe and defeat them completely. Even if we cannot end this cataclysm on the spot, they will be able to make a great deal of vitality and win a few odds for our magical universe. After the words fell, Jian Wushuang suddenly understood the importance of Feng Tianqi. Master God, how can I get this banner? Jian Wushuang asked. The of the universe heard the words. The eyes twinkled and spit out 8 words. Nanshuan Xian Dao, Feng Tian Ancestor. Feng Tian Ancestor? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and looked at the god of Zhou, revealing a strange look. The sword is unparalleled. The old man knows that you are wondering why the old man knows exactly where the sky banner is, and why not take it. The Zhou shook his head and said with a bitter smile, This old ancestor and the old man are old. It can be regarded as the same origin. When the old man was not yet strong, he had a festival with him and snatched him. I feel ashamed of him. If the old man went to him and asked him to surrender Feng Tianqi, He would definitely refuse to say that the old man would have to run into a gray nose. As a last resort, the old man did not want to force him to kill him. Therefore, I can only send you to Nanxian Xiandao for a walk. If that old ancestor is stubborn and really refuses to care about the overall situation, then the old man will have to use some extraordinary means. Chapter 45-29. In the temple of the temple, the candlelight was shaking. Jian Wushuang and the two people, this talk is a whole night. Go to Nanshuan Xiandao to find Feng Tian's ancestor? Jian Wu's eyes twinkled, thinking slightly. I am afraid that it will take some time to go there, but in the refined God sect, there is a corpse of Tai Luo sitting in the town, and there are elders such as Banshan and others to help. It should not be too much to think about. It is good. Converging his thoughts, Jian Wushuang nodded his head and agreed. Seeing this, the of courage flashed with relief and said, "The sword is unparalleled. The old man must remind you a few words. The guy Feng Tian has a strange temperament and has always been unhappy to play cards according to common sense. If you meet him, keep basic politeness, but you do and need to accommodate him, or he will tease you in every way." Is that so? Jian Wu's eyes flashed, indicating that he knew. At last, the of the universe stretched out his right hand and patted Jian Wushuang on the shoulder. For the first time, he said solemnly and earnestly, "Sword Wushuang, the rise and fall of our universe, there is a large part, it is tied to you. Master Zhou God has spoken heavily, my sword Wushuang must be for the universe, go to the fire, and never die." Jian Wushuang also solemnly returned. In fact, for Jian Wushuang, now he has mastered the practice method of the virtual universe. Even if the divine universe is destroyed, he can continue to practice in the virtual universe. Now he is still the master of the refining divine sect. No worse than in the divine universe. However, the divine universe is his home and the place where he gave everything to grow up. His lover, his loved ones, and his division are deeply rooted in the divine universe. For this reason, he will never die. On the second day, before everyone noticed, Jian Wushuang had left the base camp and rushed towards Nanshuan Xiandao. Nanshuan Xiandao is located in the Nanshuan star field, which is not the center of the universe. According to its location, it is already considered a barren land. In the star domain, most ordinary mortals live. Half-year later, located at the edge of the universe, a black-robed figure stepped out of the cosmic passage. Is Nanning's star field convenient? Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed a tiredness, and he continued to go all out, even though he felt some fatigue. I was preparing to release my divine power to find where Nanshuan Xiandao was in the Nanshuan star field, but I found that the entire Nanshuan star field seemed to be covered by a layer of mist, and the divine power could not be eroded. You don't have to think about it, it must be the handwriting of that old ancestor. He shook his head, and Jian Wushuang did not care about it. He used his divine power to capture the position of the ancestor of Feng Tian. After all, he came to be beggared if he came this time. Call out. Swordless Wu stepped on one foot and immediately fell into the Nanshuan star domain, the most prosperous city. Sweet gourds, selling gourds. Suzhou Jinlanfang Rouge, come and siege. The city is so bustling that many mortals are walking on the street, and there are hawkers on both sides walking around and yelling, it looks like a firework on earth. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang couldn't help feeling a little sigh in his heart. Since his strength, he has faced countless killings every day. His heart is tense and he has never stopped walking. A mortal life, although short, has his pleasure. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang reached out to stop an elderly man and asked with a smile, "Old man, do you know where Nanshuan Xiandao is?" Nanshuan Xiandao? After hearing that, the old man asked, "Afterlife, did you go to the old teacher to listen to the class?" "Old master?" Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows when he heard the words. The old immortal teacher in the old man's mouth was afraid that he was the old ancestor. Nodded his head, Jian Wushuang replied, "Yes, old man, do you know where is the Nanshan Xiandao where the old fairy master is? Out of the city, go straight to the south. You will see a piece of the South China Sea. When you get there, there will be boats for fishing. You spend some silver and rent a boat and go straight to the sea and head south. If there is a fate, you will encounter Nanshuan Xiandao. If you have no fate, you will search the South China Sea and you will not see the trace of the old ferry. The old man said, "Thanks a lot." Jian Wushuang arched his hand at the old man and immediately stepped on it, disappearing. This scene fell into the eyes of mortals crossing the street, causing a sudden shock. Countless people knelt down, crying immortals. However, after seeing Jian Wushuang leaving, the old man opened a slight smile. "Little guy, it's not that simple to find an old man." Shaking his head, the old man also disappeared. However, the passers-by around him seemed to have not noticed it. Just one breath. Sword Wushuang reached the edge of the South China Sea. Numerous fishermen erected wooden fishes in a drying net and air-dried. Jian Wushuang thought for a while. Instead of directly looking for Nanshuan Xiandao, he picked up 2 stones and turned them into silver and bought a black boat in the hands of a fisherman. A whooping light boat went into the sea. Jian Wushuang stood on the bow of the boat, standing against his hands, and the violent wind blew his hair. No matter how turbulent the waves were, he stood still and couldn't speak easily. The whooping kayak made a long mark on the blue sea, and Jian Wushuang was among them. I also saw many other boats and ships, all of whom were visiting the immortals. After 3 days, Jian Wushuang's brow gradually wrinkled. According to common sense, with his speed, it should have been strolling around the South China Sea. However, he found that he seemed to be spinning around after a fog of fog. "Play me." Jian Wushuang looked up into the distance, and his eyes were impatient. From the advent of this star field, he did not deliberately converge. This ancestor of the sky should have known his existence. Jian Wushuang confessed himself that after coming to this star field, his behavior was quite polite. Whatever the ancestor of this letter, he should show up. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang's brows became more and more wrinkled and tighter. The impatience in his eyes became more apparent. At the same time, in the South China Sea, there is an island surrounded by sky and clouds. The island is full of fairy spirits and fairy cranes soaring, which has a taste of fairyland on earth. On the island, a bamboo forest. An old man with a handkerchief and a hand-cranked lupin sits on the floor with his knees crossed. In front of the old man, a chessboard was set up. There was no one on the opposite side of the board, but every time after the old man moved his fingers, the board automatically appeared with black spots to play against him. "Master, that person has been trapped in the formation for 3 days, shall we not care about him?" A raw child with red lips and white teeth stood beside the old man and asked quietly. Chapter 45-30 Nanshuan Xiandao, Among a Bamboo Forest. Feng Tian's ancestors from the same era as the gods of Zhou played chess on their own. Beside him, a young boy with red lips and white teeth stood quietly, holding a bowl with a large bowl in his hand. The bowl is full of tea, but the tea is reflected in a picture. I saw in the picture a young man with black hair and black eyes with pale gold eyes, standing on a small canopy boat, standing with his hands on his back, constantly spinning around the bowl. "Master, how did you say that this person found you? You haven't asked the world about it, you have retired the universe for so many years, and most people don't even know you exist." The little boy asked softly. Snapped. Feng Tian's ancestor dropped on the chessboard and snorted coldly. "Who else can it be? It must be the old man of the god of the gods," and told this person to let this person come to the old man to seal the sky banner. Xiao Dao Tong smashed his tongue when he heard the words. "I am afraid that there is only his own master in the entire universe. Dare to call the of the universe an old man? Master, I'd like to lend Feng Tianqi if I don't see it. I watched the sky last night and found that there are 7 stars in a row, forming a dragon-slaughtering force. I am afraid that it will not be long before a calamity will arise and we will lose the luck of our universe." Hesitating for a moment, the little boy said boldly. He was giving a finger to his hand, and the ancestor Feng Tian glared at the young boy and said, "Are you a master or am I a master? When do you want to teach for a teacher?" With a cold hum, Feng Tian's ancestor said, "If it wasn't for the old man who had snatched the opportunity to become a teacher, Where is the position of the Zhou who can accommodate him now? It should be for the teacher. When he grabbed the chance of the old man, he considered the feeling of being a teacher. Now that the world is in trouble, he wants to come to the old man? What does he think of me, his tool person? After hearing this, the little boy couldn't help but spit out his tongue and said nothing more. He knew that his master had been hesitant about the incident that year. After all, it was the only opportunity to break through the current realm. It was an exaggeration to be robbed of such an opportunity. Master, why don't I tell this person and let this person leave? The young boy asked tentatively. Tell him what? This man has been trapped in the formation for a few days, and he will naturally retreat and leave on his own. Feng Tian's ancestor continued to point his finger and shook his head. However, just then, Feng Tian's ancestor suddenly seemed to notice something. His face suddenly changed and he was furious. What do you want to do, this guy? Next moment, the ancestor of Feng Tian disappeared instantly. And now in the South China Sea, swordless double-footed awning Bao, looking at the ancestor of Feng Tian who has not appeared for a long time, the impatience between the eyebrows finally broke out. Feng Tian, the ancestor, you senti come out, then I ruined the South China Sea and destroyed the billions of souls on this star. Anyway, when people from different universes come over, everyone will die. It's better to die early. Superb. Jian Wu's eyes were cold and his right foot was stomped hard. The whole man rose to the sky and stood on the South China Sea. With the grasp of Jian Wushuang's right hand, the billions of tons of seawater in the South China Sea all boiled, forming tens of thousands of waterspouts and Unicom Skyrim. At this moment, the mortal people who live in the entire Nanshuan star field can see this across the sky, like a waterspout in the last days of disaster, with a deep horror on their faces, kneeling on the ground one by one, mouth calling immortals for their lives. Stop! At this moment, a meteorite-like figure telling the movement quickly burst into the air, dragging a long flame in the air. For a moment, the terrifying coercion deterred all directions, and the thousands of seawater that formed the tornado collapsed and returned to the sea. Boy, are you looking for death? An old man wearing a martyr's robe with his hair wrapped in a thin wooden stick is staring at Xiang Wushuang with a beard. Feng Tian ancestor? Jian Wushuang turned his head toward Feng Tian's ancestor. The coercion of Feng Tian's ancestor was almost like a mountain of millions. Just for a moment, he almost made the sword unparalleled. Faced with such pressure like a prison, Jian Wushuang's knee was never bent half a minute. Feng Tian, the ancestor, now the entire universe is in danger, and life and death can only exist in one thought. All the supreme in the universe are all for the safety of the universe. You will never regret it, but you will escape from the world and hide here for your personal pleasure, regardless of the entire universe. Really rotten. Jian Wushuang saw that Feng Tian's ancestor did not act on him for the first time, and he could not help but let his heart loose slightly, and then looked coldly at Feng Tian's ancestor and said. He knew this, and some of them meant to kidnap the ancestor of Feng Tian from the vantage point of morality, but he had to say that once the divine power fell, at that time, maybe the entire universe would be destroyed and massacred. This matter has been closely related to everyone in the universe. Moreover, if he can't wake up Feng Tian's ancestor this time, then it will be the thunderous means of the gods of the heaven. Even if this old ancestor is strong, facing the of the sky, there is only one way to lose. In other words, he is not so much here to borrow Feng Tianqi as to save Feng Tian's ancestors. Well, what is the universe's life and death to do with the old man? The old man has already deployed 10 million arrays here. Even if the people in the virtual universe come in, how can I help him? Feng Tian's ancestor snorted coldly and said disdainfully. Naive. Jian Wushuang interrupted the words of the ancestor Feng Tian and said a little embarrassedly, Feng Tian ancestor, do you really think that with these arrays you laid, can you really resist the million army of the virtual universe? The ancestor of Feng Tian heard that he was trying to refute. Seeing Jian Wushuang continued to say, okay, even if you can have a place to live among the millions of troops in the virtual universe, would you like to be a dog of the bereaved family and hide in Tibet all day long? Before Jian Wushuang saw Feng Tian's ancestors again, he wanted to persuade Feng Tian's ancestors kindly, but when he saw Feng Tian's ancestors, these thoughts disappeared immediately. He will use the most straightforward words to turn into a slap to completely wake up Feng Tian's ancestors. Chapter 45-31. There are finished eggs under the nest. The country is broken, and the home does not exist. You should understand these truths. After Jian Wushuang said these words, his voice was already roaring like a thunder, shaking his deafness, and arousing the sea of water again. And at this time, a young boy had been driving Zhuguang from a distance. "Junior, do you dare to insult me?" After this remark, Feng Tian's ancestor trembled with trembling, extended his fingers and tremblingly pointed at Jian Wushuang. His forehead was blue and blue. "I think he was an ancestor of the sky, born in the beginning of the universe, and chaos has not yet opened. When did anyone dare to face him and blame him? I think you're looking for death." The endless atmosphere of Hongmeng and Xianhuang emerged from Feng Tian's ancestors, surging to the extreme. "Master!" At this moment, the little boy who came from driving the light grabbed Feng Tian's ancestor's arm and quickly advised, "Master, you dissipate, you are so old, go, what are you doing with the juniors? How bad is it to be angry?" While talking, Xiao Daotong winked at Jian Wushuang and let Jian Wushuang quickly apply oil to the soles of the feet, and the wind was screaming, "Juvenile, do you want to provoke the teacher? Let go of the teacher." Feng Tian's ancestor glared at the young boy. On the other side, watching Feng Tian's ancestors and the young boy who madly winked at him, Jian Wushuang half-stepped back, took a deep breath, and said humbly, "Senior Feng Tian, the junior did not mean to insult you. The junior was just telling the truth." After a pause, Jian Wushuang continued to speak. "Senior Feng Tian, the junior will only say it once. After you listen, you can borrow or not Feng Tianqi, it is with you, and the junior will not force it anymore." Hearing this, the anger of Feng Tian's ancestor's heart was gone, but he still had a face overcast. "Well, junior, the old man will have to see. What are you going to say?" "It is good." Jian Wushuang nodded, without hesitation, and said, "Senior Feng Tian, I know that Lord God of God once snatched your chance and made you lose the opportunity of the impact. Therefore, you have always been resentful, so you are disheartened, you live in a drowsiness, and you no longer care about the universe." Alas! Sword Wushuang stepped out, the front of the words turned, and his tone became heavy. "But you can see that Lord God of Evil has become a town, sitting alone in the universe battlefield for hundreds of millions of years, and not teaching the aliens of the universe to take a step? Do you know that in the midst of the catastrophe, the wind and rain are shaking, countless universes are supreme, in order to protect the universe, rather sing and die in the rain instead of living under a fence? I have fought for 5,000 years in the extraterritorial battlefields. I have seen countless days of proud people in the world, who have died one after another, just to stop the half-inch of the virtual universe. I used to know that Sword Emperor Taro once defeated the world's invincible to suppress 9 heavens and 10 places with one sword, but in order to resist the aliens of the universe, buried the universe, all the people of the country disappeared. I used to know that Tianjiao East, the Lord's body, can cut the supreme, but it is worldly proud, difficult to control in all ages, but also died in the hands of aliens. Before he died, half-step back. I also see thousands of unknown people in my universe. They are a powerful person. They are the masters of the Holy Land. They are the darlings of heaven and earth. They are the arrogance of the world, but die silently for the universe. There is no complaint. Why are they so willing to die? Because they know that this universe is their home. They know that behind them is their family, disciples, wife and children. Therefore, there is only one way to choose from this campaign, and that is death battle. Speaking of this, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, his tone became a bit lighter, and looked straight at Feng Tian's ancestor, and said, "But they have no obligation to stipulate that they must die for the universe. They like you can settle down for a while, regardless of the world, and wait until the alien army arrives, and find a hiding place at will. Jian Wushuang's words were finished, no generous singing, no pretense of grief, but the most plain narrative. However, it was this bland narrative, but it was extremely shocking, like a heavy hammer, and it was severely hit on the heart of Feng Tian's ancestor. Feng Tian's ancestors were silent. He stared at Jian Wushuang and said nothing. He is not a man with a corrupt nature. Otherwise, when Jian Wushuang first took the life of hundreds of millions of souls and threatened her, he would kill Jian Wushuang in anger under the fury. But there was a knot in his heart. This knot was due to the appearance of the universe, and he was locked tightly by himself. Jian Wushuang's words still did not untie his knot, but in another position, he tied a bigger knot again. Master, I see. I see if you would lend Feng Tianqi to him, in case the universe goes down, it will be us who are in the end. Xiaodaotong was immature, some tearful whispers. To shut up. Feng Tian's ancestor glared at Xiaodaotong, then looked at Xiang Jianwushuang. Although his heart was also shaken, he still pretended to carelessly murmured, "Well, they are willing to die, that is they're stupid, what does it have to do with my husband? Hugh wants to use righteousness to oppress me." After that, he glanced at Jian Wushuang, and when Jian Wushuang really turned around, he yelled angrily, "Boy, stop for your husband." Oh! Originally, he had no hope for Feng Tian's ancestors. He planned to let the god of the gods make a sword unparalleled. He paused, looked back at Feng Tian's ancestors, and frowned. "Fengdan, what else do you do?" I saw Feng Tian's ancestor glaring at Jian Wushuang, raised his head, and snorted from his nose, "Little guy, don't rush away first, the old man didn't say no to borrow?" In this way, you accompany the old man to play a game of chess. You won the old man by playing chess, and the old man lent Feng Tianqi to you. How? After hearing this, you read the book www.Akanshu. Jian Wushuang hasn't said anything yet. The little boy next to Feng Tian's ancestor suddenly burst into ecstasy. What level is his master playing chess? He knows too well. That is the smelly chess basket, the existence of pure food delivery. He quickly winked at Jian Wushuang, so that Jian Wushuang should come down. Jian Wushuang frowned secretly. Although I don't know which one of the old ancestors was playing, but looking at the happy appearance of the Xiaodaotong next to him, he nodded and responded, "It is good." That boy, you go to Nanshu and Xiandao with the old man, we have a point. The ancestor of Feng Tian snorted, and then grabbed it with a big hand. An invisible big hand grabbed the sword Wushuang, stepped on it, turned into a skylight, disappeared on the surface of the South China Sea. When Jian Wushuang saw a flower in front of her eyes, when she reacted, she had already reached an immortal, bamboo-lined island. Chapter 45-32. The field of view changes rapidly. When Jian Wushuang saw the situation in front of him, he was already in the middle of a fairy island, white misty fairy island, with rows of sharp-billed, red-top, white-feathered cranes, like elegant fairies, walking leisurely. Footsteps on the beach. Startled by the fish in the sea, they suddenly spread their wings and flew up, marking white trails in the air, showing their beauty. Taking a breath, even the divine power became full. The sword, unparalleled, fell in front of a bamboo house. Outside the bamboo house, the sun in the news, the sea breeze is slightly warm. On both sides of a chessboard, there are two jade plates filled with black and white chess pieces. Feng Tian's ancestor sat on the side of black chess, and saw Jian Wushuang looking at the admiration of this island, and he couldn't help but say a little smug, "Junior, my husband asks you, my husband's island is okay? My husband told you that every mortal who has spent hundreds of years on the island of the old man can be transformed into an immortal, and the supreme is here. It is also able to speed up the practice 10 times. Compared with the so-called blissful places in the so-called top forces of the universe, amazing." As he said, his ancestor Feng Tian smiled as he stroked his beard. However, the first sentence that Jian Wushuang spoke instantly made the smile on his face freeze. "I just sigh, the universe is almost dying out, and the predecessors still have their minds here to relax and take it easy. Hearing this, Feng Tian's ancestor quickly flashed a look of shame on his face, staring with a beard and staring. Boy, what else would you do besides using the righteousness of the universe to crush the old man? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but stupefy, and the young boy on the side also covered his mouth and smiled a little. Stop talking, come and play chess with my husband. Feng Tian's ancestor impatiently hooked at Sword Wushuang. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and sat cross-legged opposite Feng Tian's ancestor. Respect the old and love the young, the old man first. Feng Tian's ancestor held the black finger and landed first on the chessboard. I saw that one finger fell, and the middle of the chessboard was in the center, but the position of Tianyuan. After setting his fingers, Feng Tian's ancestor looked up at Jian Wushuang, and his mouth aroused his elation. He said, "The old man's trick is to settle the situation directly. At the center of the chessboard, he will directly reach the sword stopped your throat. Junior, how do you see me fighting?" Hearing this, the little boy could not help laughing again. The master is moving out of his theory again. Pointing at Tianyuan seems to be awesome, but it is actually the best way to start. Someone who knows a little about chess can tell from his finger that the master is a chicken. Thinking of this, Xiao Dao Tong hoped to look at Xiang Jianwushuang. To be honest, he hopes that the sword is unparalleled. He is different from Feng Tian's ancestors. Feng Tian's ancestors hold themselves back and lock themselves in this small Nanshuan Xiandao. It is because they have a holiday with the of the universe. Liang Zi Erlai can also be regarded as being angry with himself. But young children do not have this mentality. Just when he thought that Jian Wushuang would immediately destroy Feng Tian's ancestors in the form of smashing the sword, Xiao Dao Tong's expression was stagnant. I saw Jian Wushuang staring at the chess game with a grimace on his face, with a frown on his face, a serious and thoughtful look. Next moment, seeing Jian Wushuang's solemn preparations, he said solemnly, "The predecessor's chess skills are superb, and they have reached a state of infatuation. I'm afraid that they have reached the top in Go. This is a very bad move." However, the younger generation also has a coping style. Snapped. I saw Jian Wushuang lifted his white finger and landed on the bottom left corner of the board. The predecessors pointed at the central Tianyuan is fierce, but if the younger people hold on to the four corners and then slowly figure it out, they will be surrounded by layers, and they will definitely form a posture of catching in the air. The trail boy stunned. What is this? What a catch! I see how the old man killed the quartet and broke the boat. I saw Feng Tian's ancestor's eyes flashed, murderous, and dropped his finger again, also falling in the lower right corner of one of the four sharp corners. Junior, you have Zhang Liangji, I have a wall ladder, and now I have guarded a retreat. How do you think you fight the old husband? Feng Tian's ancestor touched his smile, said inexorably deep and inexhaustible, and could not finish talking. Watch me attack again. Jian Wushuang was another finger, and fell into one of the four corners. Xiao Dao Tong stood on the side, seeing the falling fingers as rain. You came to me, with the murderous Jian Wushuang and Feng Tian ancestor in his eyes. He finally confirmed a little. This grandma has two chickens. If it weren't for the little boy who was proficient in Go, he would have been deceived into seeing the two men vowed eloquently and full of reasonable words. These two dishes are fine, but they are so reasonable I almost believed. The little boy muttered to himself, inexplicably desperate. Really? After a while. Ha, Junior, you lost. Feng Tian's ancestors slammed the chessboard, causing the chessboard pieces to tremble violently. Happy. Younger, you are the old man who is in love with this game of chess, the first person to win in thousands of years. Ha. Feng Tian's ancestor laughed wildly. The sword is unparalleled, but his face is blue and white. He didn't expect that his own organs calculated that in the end he was still a move away from chess. He was taken by the ancestor of Feng Tian to block the last hole. Xiao Dao Tong smiled bitterly. What did he see? Obviously, it is a super chess game that relies on deductive calculations. In the hands of Jian Wushuang and Feng Tian's ancestors, it has become a rough hole to see who will fill the gap in chess first. Really a little spicy eyes. Jian Wushuang stood up and sighed silently. If he loses, he loses. He is not a loser. In this case, the only thing to do is to retreat first, and let the Zhou find a way to get it in person. However, this ancestor is not bad by nature. No matter how you are, you still have to persuade the Zhou to find a way to retain this ancestor. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang arched his hand towards Feng Tian's ancestor and said, "Seniors, juniors leave." After that, Jian Wushuang set up Jian Guang and was ready to go. Laughing loudly, shouting, happy, immersed in the joy of great victory, the ancestor Feng Tian could not help but witness. He asked Jian Wushuang to play chess because he knew that his chess skills were bad and he had never won. He wanted to use this to lend Feng Tianqi to Jian Wushuang. In this way, he also saved his face and stepped down. Lend Feng Tianqi. But Jian Wushuang is going to leave. Isn't he planning to trade for nothing? I really don't know if you junior is not upset, or my husband. I have made great strides in chess recently. It's really amazing. Alas, confidants are hard to find and loneliness is like snow. There was a silent sigh in his heart, and immediately, Feng Tian's ancestor looked up at the back of Jian Wushuang preparing to leave, and burst into a drink. Slow. Chapter 45-33. Slow. Slammed and exploded in Nanshuan Xiandao. I saw Feng Tian's ancestor glaring with anger and a wave of his hand, and innumerable spells poured out, forming a huge mask, like an invisible glass, blocking the figure that Swordsman was preparing to leave. Senior Fengtan, what else do you want? Jian Wushuang stopped and looked back, looking helplessly towards Feng Tian's ancestor. Chess also lost, and Feng Tian's ancestor should be proud of himself. Suddenly, what did he want to stop him from doing? Doesn't he want to humiliate him? Junior, do you want to come here, Nanshan Island, old man? Feng Tian's ancestor gave Jian Wushuang a glance, and Ling Heng said. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang's pupils could not help shrinking. Couldn't Feng Tian ancestor change his face? When Jian Wushuang quietly grasped the Tai Luo divine sword and was ready to surprise him, when he broke the array into the far distance, I saw Feng Tian's ancestor agitating with a large sleeve and waving coldly. Junior, do you want to leave the sky banner today? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang first stunned, and then exulted on his face. Thank you, Senior Feng Tian. Today, if you borrow the grace of Fengxianqi, the whole universe will be impressed within 5 days and grateful. After that, Jian Wushuang stepped out and fell in front of Feng Tian's ancestor. At the same time, Jian Wushuang felt silently in his heart. It's no wonder that the God of Heaven said that Feng Tian's ancestors were strange in character. Now it seems that this is really true. This change of face is faster than turning the book. Immaculate. Immaculate. Jian Wushuang shook his head in his heart. Don't rush to thank me first. The old man can lend Feng Tianqi to you, but the old man needs conditions. Feng Tian's ancestor once again glanced at Jian Wushuang and said. In this regard, Jian Wushuang nodded and did not refute. Feng Tianqi is one of the 7 ancestors of Qidao. It is extremely powerful. There is no match in the world, and Jian Wushuang does not expect empty-handedness to seal the banner. The ultimate ancestors represent the most extreme force in the world. The Taro Excalibur represents the ultimate killing power. The Wu Ding Chao Ding represents the most extreme creative power. And this sky banner represents the most extreme seal suppression force. Senior, but it doesn't matter. Jian Wushuang arched his hand and said, It is good. Feng Tian's ancestor took a deep breath, and his expression became solemn and serious for the first time. He stretched out a finger and pointed at the Taro Excalibur hanging from the swordless pair of waists, and said, Junior, Feng Tianqi is the ancestor of the Dao Tao. If you want to borrow Feng Tianqi from the old husband, you can also exchange it with one of the same ancestors of the same Dao. If the old man did not admit it wrong, you have this handle on your waist. Saber is the killing sword that represents the killing among the patriarchs. After speaking, he stared at the sword unparalleled. This is a transaction and a test. He wanted to see Jian Wushuang, Is it true as he said before on the South China Sea, willing to give everything for the universe? After hearing this, Jian Wushuang was silent. It can be said that he is now able to fight across the border. In addition to his extremely powerful magical powers and sword skills, half of the reasons are from the Taro Excalibur, which has given him the terrifying power. If the Tai Luo Divine Sword is surrendered, the sword's unparalleled combat power will be greatly reduced. If it is normal, it would be okay. Now that the catastrophe is about to start, he wants to go to battle to kill the enemy. After a long silence, Senior Fengtan, sorry I can't. The sword took a deep breath, and she sank openly. Hearing this, Feng Tian's ancestors were stunned, and then sneered in his heart. He, what is universal and what is willing to die for the universe? But it's just nice to speak, standing back does not hurt. Once it's about your own interests, you're in shape. Thinking of this, Feng Tian's ancestor frowned, and when he was about to let Jian Wushuang leave, he heard Jian Wushuang continue to say, Senior Feng Tian, Tai Luo Excalibur is my weapon. A swordsman, if there is no sword in his hand, how can he use his residual heat? If the predecessor you want the Taro Excalibur, the younger can promise you, and after the war of catastrophe is over, I can give you the Terra Excalibur. As for your predecessor, you said that you want that ancestor to exchange. Wow! Jian Wushuang turned over with his right hand, and a bronze small tripod covered with quaint grains fell into Jian Wushuang's hands. Senior, what do you think of the younger generation? Wu Yi Chao Ding. Suddenly, Feng Tian's ancestor was shocked. The Wu Ding Chao Ding can be said to be the most precious one among the seven-handed ancestors. Because Wu Xing Chao Ding stands for creation. Killing and destroying is simple, but creating is difficult. One of the most critical factors in wanting to take the step to the of the universe is to understand creation. How can you have the Wu Ding Chao Ding? Feng Tian's ancestors skyrocketed in his eyes, and his voice was a little trembling. The senior doesn't need to care where my chaotic tripod comes from, the senior just needs to tell me if I can change the sky banner with you. Jian Wushuang said lightly. Feng Tian's ancestor heard the words, took a deep look at Jian Wushuang and said, it looks like it's incomplete, right? But even so, it's enough to exchange the flag with the old man. Speaking of which, Feng Tian's old prince paused. Xinsheng said, boy, the old man does not take advantage of you. To tell you the truth, this chaos is the key factor to break through the last step, but your current state is temporarily unavailable. You are in the hands of a violent creature. Therefore, the old man promised you that after the end of this catastrophe, this chaotic warrior will be returned to you, and even Feng Tianqi will be presented to you as a gift. After saying that, Feng Tian's ancestor turned his right hand, and a small black flag appeared in Feng Tian's ancestor's hand. He took the lead in pushing Feng Tianqi to Jian Wushuang. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded. You can shu www. Akanshu. Calm as the ancestor of Feng Tian said, although this Wu Ding Chaos tripod is good, it is currently of little use to him. On the contrary, Feng Tianqi is currently his most urgent need. After taking over Feng Tianqi, Jian Wushuang pushed it with his right hand, and handed over Wu Chaos Ding to Feng Tian's ancestor. Predecessor Feng Tian, now that the catastrophe is about to happen, and the younger generation still has everything to do, so I don't want to stay any more and leave. Jian Wushuang arched his hand towards Fengshen's ancestor. It is good. Feng Tian's ancestor nodded, knowing that when there are indeed many things today, there are no more swords. Senior Feng Tian, then we will see you tomorrow. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly at Feng Tian's ancestor and Xiao Dao Tong, and immediately stepped into a sharp sword light, like a tidal wave, soared into the sky, disappeared on the Nanshuan Xiandao, leaving only a long white marks. Chapter 45-34, Call Out. Long white marks passed in the air, and the figure of Jian Wushuang gradually turned into a small black spot, completely disappearing into the sky. The already calm sea water washes the beach in waves, bringing countless things like shells, gravel and starfish, reflecting the blue sky. Feng Tian's ancestor took the Wu Ding Chaos tripod and stood with his hands in his hands. He stared at the sky dully and never returned to God for a long time. Behind him, the young boy looked down and said nothing. Juvenile, do you say that you have done wrong for your teacher for so many years? Feng Tian's ancestor said suddenly. He couldn't hear any emotion in his tone, but gave a vague feeling. Xiao Dao Tong heard the words and couldn't help but hesitated. He actually knows that his master has always been a very kind person. If he is an ordinary person, he has been snatched from others for promotion opportunities. However, his master did not do so, and he never thought of how to avenge the gods in the past. Master, why do you think so? Xiao Dao Tong asked. Feng Tian's ancestor heard the words, his mouth slightly bitter, and said, in fact, in the last cataclysmic battle, if our teachers were going to die, we wouldn't die so many people in the universe. Xiao Dao Tong heard the words, still a little dazed. However, he knew that by virtue of his master's power, if he really shot, let alone the divine power universe would not die so many people, it would not be impossible to reverse the situation. You know your master, but people who come from the same era as the of the universe, was the one who stabilized the of the year. Even now, after the of the reaches that unspeakable realm, his master is more than God, there is only one level of strength. Forget it, naive, tell you don't understand. Feng Tian's ancestor shook his head, and immediately pursed his lips instead of talking. Only he knows that he has trapped himself on Nanliao Island for so many years, but he has given up on himself and he is unwilling to face reality. Suddenly, Feng Tian's ancestor exhaled a sigh of relief, looked back to the little boy who knew his shoulders were high, and said with a smile, Juvenile, how many years have you been a teacher? Xiaodaotong heard the words stunned, although he didn't understand why his master suddenly asked this, but also felt that his master was a little weird today. But he still obediently pointed his fingers and calculated seriously, Master, it has been 1,000,000 years since you picked me up by the sea. 1,000,000 years, you have been a teacher for millions of years on this island. Feng Tian's ancestor sighed, his words turned again, and suddenly said softly a word that made Xiaodaotong look dull. Juvenile, do you want to go out and have a look? What the teacher said was to see the real vast galaxy, Wuxing Xinghai, and see the real world. I. The young boy opened his eyes in black and white, and became a little short of breath. After he was picked up from the beach by his ancestor Feng, he never left this place. At the beginning, he would also play in the mortal kingdom, make friends and make fun and laugh together. But it didn't take long for him to discover that mortals were born old, sick, and dead, and had twilight. When he closed it once, and went to find his former companions happily, those companions had already become their ancestors' graves, and the tombs were 3 feet high. The life of a mortal may be just a time for him to meditate. Over time, he will no longer go to play in the mortal kingdom. Otherwise, once life and death leave, he will only increase his sadness and sadness. It can be said that during his 1,000,000 years, he spent almost all of his time on Nanxian Xiandao with his ancestor Feng Tian. He could not wait any longer, and wanted to see the wonderful universe in Master's mouth, and wanted to see the splendid sea of stars. But he didn't want to raise it and make his teacher embarrassed. He knew that on the surface, he seemed to be careless, as if he didn't care about everything. He played a particularly stinky master, and deep down, there was always a knot. I think. After hesitating for a long time, the little boy took a deep breath and said these 2 words firmly. After he had finished speaking, he thought his master would give him a stern glance, and then blamed and reprimanded him, so he lowered his head and didn't dare to look at Master's face. However, what he waited for was a laugh that Master had never had before. Okay, sir, that teacher will take you to see what the universe really looks like. Feng Tian's ancestor laughed heartily, laughed freely, and never laughed as he pleased. I saw in his eyes that the light was skyrocketing, and an extremely terrifying hegemony emanated from him. On this day, the ancestor of Feng Tian found the true ancestor of Feng Tian who was frozen in his heart. He is the first person under the of the universe. Juvenile, since you are going to the outside world, you can't wear this dress. The outside girls are not dressed like you. Feng Tian's ancestor waved his right hand, and a set of purple-fringed tulle skirt appeared in his hand. Go and change this dress. What? After hearing the words, Xiao Dao Tong stayed in a daze, took the long skirt of Feng Tian's ancestors, then trot all the way, and ran into the bamboo house of Nanshuan Xiandao. After a while, a tall girl with a perfect figure in a long skirt, nervously grasping the skirt with her hands, walked out of the bamboo house timidly. Her bright eyes are bright, white as snow, and her clear eyes are like clear water. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on her face, showing a huge swath of red. Her facial features are exquisite and exquisite, her face crooked and her jaw sharp. There are many beauties in the universe, either cold or enchanting or cold, but in her body, there are things that most women do not have. That is clean. The words clean are simple, but they are the rarest. Master, I am a bit uncomfortable, so let's change back to that robe. The naive pinched her clothes, lowered her head, and said weakly. I don't know why. She felt her heart beating and her palms sweating. Fool, don't change it. Feng Tian's ancestor gave him a naive look and said in a threatening tone. He sighed in his heart. This trip left Nanshuan Xiandao, only he knew what he was going to do. After taking her through the universe, he will also go and do something for this universe. The answer to Feng Tian's ancestor's mind is unknown. Juveniles don't know that this long skirt is the ancestor of Feng Tian who consumed all his treasures and trained the strong defense of Xianxian. In terms of value, I am afraid that it is no longer under the ancestors. This is Feng Tian's ancestor, using his live's heritage, tailor-made gifts for the naive. You son, if the master is gone in the future, I will rely on this fairy to protect you. Feng Tian's ancestor said silently in his heart, but he raised his head and reached out his hand, playing a brain crash on the naive forehead with a somewhat vicious tone. Fool, if you let the teacher know that you dare to change this dress and pick your skin for the teacher. Okay, hey master, what are you doing so fiercely? The naive rubbed the place where his head was bombarded, and grumbled with dissatisfaction. The ancestor of Feng Tian snorted and didn't speak anymore, but looked down at the land under his feet, and his eyes were replaced by a touch of memory. Old man, you have been here with my husband for so many years. I must have been bored for a long time? Alas! Feng Tian's ancestor murmured a laugh and immediately stepped on his right foot. Boom! Suddenly, the entire Nanshuan Xiandao shuddered violently, and the sea water around it was like boiling water boiling continuously. Boom boom! Numerous lands are cracking, and numerous sea waters are boiling, as if at the feet of Feng Tian's ancestor, there is a wild beast awakening. Next moment, ha! A terrifying roar exploded. The entire Nanshuan Xiandao flew up into the air, making a dull humming sound. Looking from a distance, a black basalt tortoise that is pressing across the sea emerges from the deep sea. Master, this? There was a horror in the eyes of the naive, and I saw at my feet, whereas Nanshuan Xiandao, clearly a huge basalt giant turtle. Its limbs are almost like 4 Ding Haishan needles, the pillars of Optimus. And she lived 1,000,000 years in Nanshuan Xiandao, just a carapace on the back of this giant turtle. The turbulent sea breeze blew white hair on both sides of Feng Tian's ancestor's cheeks. However, the smile on Feng Tian's ancestor's mouth became more and more abundant. The old man of the gods, the old man is out. It's time to settle accounts with you. Well, yes, the cosmic aliens, we have to solve the cosmic aliens first. Let me put this old man's account first, and first blast this group of debris out of our universe. On this day, in the endless territory of Nanzhao Star Field, countless mortals raised their heads and saw a giant tortoise covering the sky, leaving the sky. Hundreds of millions of souls, all kneeling to the ground, staring wildly at the heaven-going giant tortoise, shouting in unison to the fairy. On this day, there is no longer the legend of the old immortal master in the Nanshuan star domain. This day, a strange combination was added to the universe. A whole body is dark, a giant tortoise the size of a star. A pair of rotten old men and refined purple skirt girls traveling through the universe. Strange combination. In the starry sky of Wudi, There was a girl's excited and novel wow shout, and an old man whispered with his beard and squinting his eyes. Well, the old man forgot to ask, what's the name of the boy who played chess with the old man, and I don't know if the boy has become a gang, and the young girl should be entrusted to him. Shaking his head, the strange pair disappeared into the vast sky. And in the more distant starry sky, with a black robe, Jian Wushuang, with a cold face, had already blasted away towards the outer battlefield. Chapter 45-35. In the vast universe of stars, Jian Wushuang stepped on the light and rushed towards the battlefield outside the territory. Soon, with the outbreak of Jian Wushuang's full strength, the base camp arrived. Obviously, the sword left the base camp for only a few months without both parties, but the entire base camp was full of Shao Ses low breath, and everyone had a heavy look on his face. When Jian Wushuang saw this, he could not help frowning. In the past few months when he left the road, what happened? Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang strode into the temple of the gods. Today's sword is unparalleled, except for the two disciples under the seat of the cosmic god, the only person who can freely enter and exit the cosmic hall. Jian Wushuang, you are back. Wushan Chaojian nodded his head. He was still like Jian Wushuang when he first saw him, gentle and kind, with a smile on his face, but Jian Wushuang saw a deep tiredness on his face. Jian Wushuang, what's the situation? That Feng Tian ancestor lent you Feng Tian banner? Energizing, Zhenzhou asked. It's a shame. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, flipped his right hand, and drew a small black flag, which suddenly appeared in his hand. It is good. Seeing this, the light of God suddenly rose sharply in the eyes of Zhou God, a rare sigh of relief in his heart. With this sky banner in place, he had some confidence in this catastrophe. After a moment of groaning, the Zhou said, Jian Wushuang, there is bad news for you. Without selling a prince, God of the Eurasian immediately said, in the past 2 months, there have been virtual vagrants in the virtual universe. They have emerged from the void cracks and come to inquire about their strength. In just 1 month, nearly 10 in the battle, our friction with the cracks in the void has become more and more. The old man guessed that the war of catastrophe may break out at any time. What, so fast? Jian Wushuang heard a shock. Even though he was ready to deal with the Holocaust in his heart, when the battle of the Holocaust really came, he felt a little hesitant. Therefore, sword is unparalleled. Please trouble now to rush back to the virtual universe and wait for the husband's command. Once the war of catastrophe really begins, when the core force of the virtual universe invades our universe, the old man will give you an order. At that time, you will use the Feng Tian banner to place a blockade in their void forbidden area and cut off their rear path. Zeus said with a serious expression. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words, and there was a dignity on his face. The magnetic fields and laws between the two universes are not interlinked, which is equivalent to saying that after the people of the virtual universe have invaded the divine universe, they consume the virtual power and will not be supplied. In the usual catastrophe battles, the reason why the virtual soldiers of the virtual universe are difficult to entangle is because once they are defeated or consumed excessively, they will return to the virtual universe to resupply, and then attack again. Once Jian Wushuang was placed in the void crack in the void forbidden field, the sky banner was laid, and the 87th void crack was blocked, they could cut off their path, and divert the dummy in the void universe. At that time, under the leadership of the universe, even the use of water to grind time will be able to wipe it out, and then kill it in one fell swoop. The virtual universe, whether it is individual strength or overall strength, is stronger than the divine universe. In this case, the magical universe needs to reverse the victory and defeat, and this is the best countermeasure. The sword unparalleled, it has played a top role. I immediately rushed back to the virtual universe to set up. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang strode out of the temple hall. When I walked to the door of the Colossus Hall, Jian Wushuang seemed to think of something. He tore his right hand and tore off a corner of the garment. He used his hand as a pen and wrote a few dense lines. Master Zhou God, if I can't come back alive this time, Please help me to transfer this cloth to my wife as cold as frost. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, flicked his fingers, and this piece of cloth immediately fell into the hands of the of heaven. God heard the words, could not help but stunned. He wanted to say something, relieved a few words, but finally sighed, just nodded and answered. If Jian Wushuang wanted to cut off the back of the void universe, then he had to go deep into the void forbidden ground, and the hope of surviving was simply slim. Jian Wushuang understands this, and God of the Earth also understands this. After leaving the base camp, Jian Wushuang was alone and set off again, rushing to the void crack. This time back to the virtual universe, the Ram Supreme did not go, but stayed in the divine universe, waiting for a force after the outbreak of the war. Jian Wushuang will be alone, deep into the virtual universe, and start another kind of battle. Came to the extraterritorial battlefield. The 6th and 7th teams are now responsible for defending the battlefield. The two captains seem to have been informed by the God of the Gods, and did not ask more about Jian Wushuang's going to the virtual universe, but only instructed Jian Wushuang to be careful. At this moment in the extraterrestrial battlefield, there is a war in progress, so Jian Wushuang did not rush into the void crack, but waited for the battle to end. A small human-faced spider crawled out from the cracks in the void, densely packed with the entire sky. Fortunately, although there are many human-faced spiders, their individual strength is not strong, and the strongest is nothing but the ultimate dominating realm. Therefore, these members of the 6th and 7th teams, it is quite easy to deal with. According to Supreme Heyuan, these human-faced spiders are not intelligent bodies. They should be made by some power in the virtual universe, in order to observe and test the strength of the divine universe. A moment later, the battle for unilateral slaughter came to an end. A human-faced spider the size of a small hill fell in the air like a rain, and the cosmic starry sky was full of human-limbed spiders' broken limbs and broken blood. The battle is over, and naturally it is time for Jian Wushuang to leave. Heyuan Extreme looked at Jian Wushuang. His eyes were a little complicated. The junior, who had just entered the Supreme, once again met, and already carried the heavy responsibility of life and death in the universe. Sword unparalleled, this seat is waiting for you to return safely. Heyuan Supreme said in a deep voice. Jian Wushuang nodded with a smile and returned 2 words. For sure. Then Jian Wushuang did not hesitate, and stepped into the void crack. The black-robed figure of Jian Wushuang was gradually swallowed by a crack like a black hole. No one has ever noticed. One had already died, leaving only the skull of the human face with a faint red glow in his eyes. The figure of Jian Wushuang stepping into the void crack instantly formed a picture in his compound eyes. At the same time, in the void universe, the void forbidden ground, in a cave in the 87th crack, an ancient figure, like a sculpture, covered with mud, sitting cross-legged deep in the cave, slowly opened his eyes. Someone entered the virtual universe? Chapter 45-36. The Void Universe, the Forbidden Land of Void, has a deep cave at the 87th crack. The hole was covered with cobwebs, and a single spider ran along the cobweb and climbed on the wall, continuously spitting silver-thick silk hair from the mouth, flashing cold light. And in the middle of the cave, a mud sculpture suddenly jittered. Immediately, countless dirt cracked and fell, raising countless dust, exposing a monster old man with veins on his face and a spider-like body all over his body. Who is this? The monster old man slowly opened his eyes, and a faint light flashed from his eyes. Just a moment ago, he saw a picture when he made countless gadgets and died. In the picture, a young man with a black robe and a cold face stepped into the void crack. This matter needs to be reported to Lord Shushan. The monster old man shook his head and immediately stood up. Suddenly, countless spiders clinging to the wall, all along the cobweb, crawled towards this monster old man. Alas! Suddenly, all these spiders crashed into the monster's body. And the monster old man who had a pale face flashed a sick redness on his face. Call out. As soon as he stepped on his foot, his body flickered, and he disappeared instantly into the deep pit. The 87th crack. A huge building like a honeycomb was built here, filled with dense wormholes. The monster old man's figure just flashed and instantly appeared in the hive-like building, the middle wormhole. Strode in. 34 false honors as well as right and left false envoys were in the hall. 34 virtual honors, each of which is a 6-mark virtual honor repair, is also the main force of this catastrophe. Among them, many of them are old monsters who have survived the last catastrophe, while others are the masters of ancient holy places, immortal Taoist masters, and so on. The last emperor of the refining god, Bahuang Xuanzuan, is also here, but his position is extremely close to the bottom. And that left and right vein, the right vein, is a white-haired burly old man who once had a side with Jian Wushuang. On the throne of the main hall, there is a silk-like wrap. Inside the silkworm puppet, there was a constant heartbeat like a thunderous thunder. Seeing this monster old man walk into the hall, 34 vagrants and 2 vagrants sitting on the seats, all made a soft whistle. How could the spider be willing to come up? Well, it must have been in that dark and humid cave for a long time, and I wanted to come up and move around. They laughed and quipped. This spider is weird and superior in strength, and can be regarded as one of the most powerful among them. However, it is lonely by nature and has always been out of group. It usually stays in the dark nest in the heart of the earth. Sky Spider's old man was expressionless and ignored these jokes. Instead, he knelt down on one knee toward the white silkworm who was the first in the hall, and bowed respectfully. "Sky Spider, meet Lord Shushan." Alas! A fierce heartbeat sounded from the silkworm pupa. Immediately afterwards, a low, hoarse voice like a man and a woman heard from the silkworm pupae. "Sky Spider, what's the matter with you? Master Xing Shin is wise." The Sky Spider old man first flattered, and immediately got up and stood up and said in a deep voice, "Master Huaishu, I just took a Sky Spider larva that was responsible for exploring the news of the Divine Universe and died on the battlefield outside the Divine Universe. It was a good discovery before." "Oh, good discovery?" The 34 virtual lords in the hall all raised a slight brow, allowing the spiders to deliberately come out of the deep pit of the lair to report, "I'm afraid it's not just a good discovery." "You say it." In the silkworm pupae, a dull sound was made again. "Yes." Sky Spider nodded his head strangely and said, Lord, please see." After finishing speaking, Sky Spider made a right-hand stroke, and immediately in the hall, automatically generated a picture. In the extraterrestrial battlefield of the Divine Force universe with rain and broken limbs, a young man wearing a wide black robe, a hood, and a cold and handsome face strode into the void crack. When everyone saw this picture, they all jumped. "What? People from the Divine Universe come in? Well, what's going on? If the Divine Universe enters our virtual universe, we should immediately be aware of it. Why didn't I sense our 87th crack and someone came? Why is this?" Everyone said in amazement. The silkworm chrysalis was silent. It wasn't until half a while later that the inside of the silkworm puppet made a sound again. "Troubleshoot all cracks in the void and capture the man in the Divine Universe." As soon as this remark came to an end, the crowd was stunned, and then they reacted, and the eyes of suspicion flashed again. Could there be other void cracks in this void-forbidden space that can travel between these two universes? 34 Vane respected each other in congratulations, and then stood up to act immediately to investigate the void cracks. In the hall, it soon became quiet, leaving only the left and right imagination and the weird silkworm that kept trembling. 34 Xuanzuan walked out of the hall. No one noticed that the 8 deserted Xuanzuan who walked at the end had a shadow of uncertainty on his face. That guy and Wushuang seemed to be similar. Yahuang Xuzuan narrowed his eyes and said to himself silently. The suspicion that Jian Wushuang had already dissipated suddenly poured into his heart again. Inexplicably, he felt a little disturbed. However, he did not tell this to the Su, but in his heart, he connected the communication between one of the 5 elders refining Shinzong and Elder Dust. This person is the deity who stayed in the refining deities, and every time after that, he will report to him the size of the refining deities. It can also be said that this elder dust is of the 8 swords of the Emperor Xuanzang in the refining of the sect of surveillance sword. Dustbone, I ask you, what's wrong with Wushuang recently? After the communication was connected, Yahuang Shuzuan asked in a low voice. Master Uyghur, Wushuang has been retreating in the main hall of the sovereign, and no abnormal situation has been found. Retreat? Yahuang Shuzuan murmured to himself, and immediately said, Dustbone, go to the sovereign hall to see Wushuang immediately and see if he is still in the sovereign hall? What now? Elder Dustbone now. Immediately. Immediately. The cold mang flashed in the eyes of Bahuang Shuzuan. It is good. Suddenly, the sound of Elder Dustbone leaving was heard in the head of 8 desolates. Hanging up the rumor, Bahuang Shuzuan sneered. If Jian Wushuang really was in the Lord's Hall, then the suspect of Jian Wushuang could be washed away and his doubts about Jian Wushuang could be completely lifted. And if not? In the eyes of Bahuang Shuzuan, the killer flashed by. He wants to let Jian Wushuang taste it, dare to deceive him, and regret being born in this world. He licked his lips, and the bloodthirsty blood surged on Yahuang Zizan's face. Chapter 45-37, 45-37 Leaving the mountain. A long white mark flew across the sky. Jian Wushuang's figure gradually turned into a small black dot and disappeared into the horizon. The sea that had calmed down washed the beach in waves, bringing up countless things like shells, gravel, and starfish, reflecting the blue sky. Feng Tian Patriarch held the Chaos Wushu cauldron and stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the sky calmly and did not come back to his senses for a long time. Behind him, the little Taoist had her head lowered, not saying anything. Chu Ji, do you think I've made a mistake all these years? Feng Tian Patriarch suddenly said. There was no emotion in his voice, but it gave off a vague feeling of confusion. The little Taoist girl was stunned. She knew that her master had always been a very kind person. If it was an ordinary person who had their opportunity to advance snatched away by others, they would have long been irreconcilable with that person. However, her own master did not do so. He had also never harbored any thoughts of taking revenge on cosmos gods in the past. Master, why do you think so? The Taoist girl asked in a daze. Hearing this, Feng Tian Patriarch smiled bitterly and said, in fact, in the last battle of the Great Catastrophe War, if I had to die, our divine power universe wouldn't have lost so many people. The little Taoist girl was still a little dazed. However, he knew that with his master's power, if he really attacked, not only would so many people in the divine universe not die, but it was even possible to reverse the situation. One must know that his own master was someone who came from the same era as the cosmos gods. Back then, he had even suppressed the cosmos gods. Even now, after the cosmos gods had reached that unspeakable realm, his master's strength was only 1 level lower than that of the cosmos gods. Forget it, you're still too young. You won't understand even if I tell you. Feng Tian Patriarch shook his head, pursed his lips, and did not say anything else. Only he himself knew that he had trapped himself on South Sea Island for so many years because he had given up on himself and was unwilling to face reality. Suddenly, the Feng Tian Patriarch let out a long breath and turned to look at the little Taoist, who was only as tall as his shoulders. He smiled and said, Chi-Chi, how many years have you been with your master? The little Taoist boy was stunned. Although he didn't understand why his master would suddenly ask this, he felt that his master was a little strange today. 1,000,000 years. You've been with me on this island for 1,000,000 years. The Feng Tian Patriarch sighed and suddenly said something that made the little Tao child's expression freeze. Chu Ji, do you want to go out and take a look? What I mean is to see the real vast galaxy, the boundless sea of stars, to see the true appearance of this world. The Taoist girl's eyes widened, and her breathing became a little hurried. Ever since she had been picked up by Feng Tian Patriarch on the beach, she had never left this world. In the beginning, she would go to the mortal countries to play, make friends, and have fun. However, it did not take long for him to realize that mortals had life, old age, sickness, and death, and they had their own day and night. When she came out of her seclusion and happily went to find her former friends, they had long been dead and buried in graves, and the grass on their graves were 3 feet tall. A mortal's life was perhaps just a period of time for him to meditate. As time passed, he no longer went to the mortal countries to have fun. Otherwise, once there was a life and death separation, it would only add to her sadness. It could be said that she had spent almost all of the past 1,000,000 years on the Southern Ocean immortal island with her master, Feng Tian Patriarch. She could not wait to see the wonderful universe that his master had talked about. She wanted to see the brilliant sea of stars. However, she did not want to bring it up and put her master in a difficult position. She knew that her master, who looked carefree on the surface and seemed to not take anything to heart, had a knot in the depths of his heart. After hesitating for a long time, the little Taoist girl took a deep breath and said the words firmly. After he finished speaking, she thought that her master would glare at her fiercely and then reprimand her. Therefore, she lowered her head and did not dare to look at her master's face. However, what she got in return was a carefree laugh that her master had never had before. "Good, my disciple, they'll take you to see what the universe really looks like." Feng Tian Patriarch laughed heartily, carefreely, and uninhibited. He had never laughed so freely before. The light in his eyes brightened, and an extremely terrifying, overbearing intent emanated from his body. On this day, the Feng Tian Patriarch finally found the courage to undo the knot in the depths of his heart. He was the #1 expert below Cosmos God. "Chu Ji, since you're going to the outside world, you can't wear this set of clothes. The girls in the outside world don't dress like you do." With a wave of his right hand, a purple silk dress with tassels appeared in his hand. "Go and change into this." Ah! The little Taoist girl was stunned for a moment. She took the dress from Feng Tian Patriarch in a daze and ran into the bamboo house on the Southern Ocean immortal island. A moment later, a tall, slender and curvaceous young lady in a long dress nervously clutched her dress as she timidly shuffled out of the bamboo house. She had bright eyes and white teeth, her skin was as white as snow, and her clear eyes were like clear water, extremely clear. The afterglow of the setting sun reflected on her face, reflecting a large patch of shyness. Her facial features were exquisite, her small face had a high nose, and her chin was sharp. There were many beauties in the universe, some cold, some enchanting, and some cold, but she had something that most women did not have. She was clean. The word clean seemed simple, but it was the rarest word. "Master, I'm a little uncomfortable, so I'll change back to that Taoist robe." Chu Ji pinched the hem of her clothes, lowered her head, and said in a weak voice. She did not know why, but she felt that her heart was thumping and her palms were sweating. "Silly disciple, you're not allowed to switch back." Feng Tian Patriarch glared at the youngling as he spoke in a threatening tone. He sighed in his heart. He was the only one who knew what he was going to do after leaving the Southern Ocean immortal island. After taking her to see the universe, he would also go and do something for this universe. Whether or not he would be able to return alive was unknown to the Feng Tian Patriarch. Chu Ji did not know that this dress was an extremely powerful defensive immortal garment that Feng Tian Patriarch had refined with all his supreme treasures. In terms of value, it was probably not much lower than a supreme ancestral weapon. This was a gift that the Feng Tian Patriarch had made for her with his life's savings. "My disciple, if Master is not here in the future, I will rely on this immortal robe to protect you," Feng Tian Patriarch said silently in his heart. However, he raised his head and stretched out his hand, flicking Chu Ji's forehead. His tone was a little fierce as he said, "Silly disciple, if Master finds out that you dare to change out of these clothes, Master will peel off your skin." Alright, I know. Master, why are you so fierce?" Chu Ji rubbed her head where she had been flicked and mumbled in dissatisfaction. Feng Tian Patriarch snorted and did not say anything else. Instead, he lowered his head and looked at the ground beneath his feet. His eyes were filled with reminiscence. "Old friend, you've accompanied this old man here for so many years. You must have been bored for a long time, right?" Bang. Feng Tian Patriarch chuckled to himself as he stomped his right foot lightly. Rumble! In an instant, the entire Southern Ocean Immortal Island began to tremble violently. The seawater within a radius of 10,000 miles began to explode like boiling water. Boom boom boom. The ground cracked open and the sea boiled. It was as if a giant beast was awakening under the feet of the Feng Tian Patriarch. The next moment, bang! An earth-shattering boom erupted. The entire Southern Ocean Immortal Island was lifted into the air, and an extremely dull buzzing sound was heard. From afar, a black turtle emerged from the deep sea. Master, this is? Chu Ji's eyes flashed with a look of horror. She saw that under her feet was no longer the Southern Ocean Immortal Island, but a giant black turtle that was hundreds of thousands of feet wide. Its 4 limbs were like 4 ocean-stabilizing divine needles, pillars that held up the sky. And the Southern Ocean Immortal Island that she had lived on for 1,000,000 years was just a shell on the back of this giant turtle. The seething sea breeze ruffled the white hair on the sides of Feng Tian Patriarch's face. However, the smile on his face grew wider. Old fool, I've come out of seclusion. It's time to settle the score with you. Oh, right, the alien races in the Void Universe, we have to deal with them first. They'll put aside the score with this old man for now and blast these B***stards out of our universe first. On this day, in the endless territories of the South Ocean Star Field, countless mortals raised their heads and saw a giant turtle that covered the sky. Hundreds of millions of living beings knelt on the ground and looked at the giant turtle in the sky with fanatical eyes. They shouted in unison to bid farewell to the immortal. On this day, there was no more legend about the old immortal master in the South Ocean Star Field. On this day, there was a strange combination in the universe. It was a giant turtle that was as big as a star. A disheveled old man and a beautiful purple-dressed girl were traveling around the universe. It was a strange combination. Oh, this old man forgot to ask. What's the name of the boy who played chess with this old man? I wonder if this boy has a Dao companion. It's time to find someone to entrust this young girl to. Shaking his head, this strange pair disappeared into the vast starry sky. And in the distant starry sky, Jian Wushuang, who was wearing a black robe and had a cold face, was already flying toward the off-world battlefield. Chapter 45-38. Inside the Lord's Dormitory. Jian Wushuang nodded with satisfaction as he looked at the corpse of Tai Luo, who exudes a medium and supreme atmosphere. Today's Taro God corpse is not an exaggeration to say that it is the second avatar of Jian Wushuang. The strengthening of Taro God corpse's strength naturally equals the enhancement of Jian Wushuang's strength. This gave Jian Wushuang a little more confidence in the next battle. With a big wave of his hand, Jian Wushuang put the corpse of Tai Luo into the town's monument, and he was sitting in the center of the yin and yang gossip chart, and began to absorb the weak force. A large amount of virtual force was sucked into the body by Jian Wushuang, and then transformed through the virtual force crystal nucleus into the purest divine power. This makes Jian Wushuang feel helpless. In the early morning of the second day, Jian Wushuang held a morning meeting. This is the homework that must be done as the master of the line. The content of the morning meeting is very simple, that is, the elders report the situation of the sect, such as the recent major events in the universe, or the talented disciples in the sect, and there are recent signs of breakthrough. Generally speaking, it is a trivial matter. The same is true of today's morning meeting. After Jian Wushuang asked some regular questions, the elders retreated. On the throne, Jian Wushuang rubbed his brows, slightly tired. I have to say that the suzerain is still very tired. He must not only cultivate by himself, but also manage the tens of thousands of disciples in the suzerain. Metropolitan. When everyone was gone, the stature was fiery and charming, and his face was charming, and the 9 musk deer in a light red coat quietly moved away from the lotus step. He stood slenderly behind Jian Wu's body and stretched out his slender jade fingers. You have to squeeze Jian Wushuang's shoulders. As soon as her hands touched Jian Wushuang's shoulders, she saw that Jian Wushuang was shocked with electric shock. She suddenly stood up, raised her eyebrows and asked her coldly, "What are you doing?" "What? Jiao Mu was startled by Jian Wushuang's tone, and a look of panic flashed on her face. Sovereign, I just watch you tired and want to help you out. No need to. Jian Wushuang said coldly. Sovereign, you didn't have to let your body take care of you a few days ago. Nine Musk stunned, then said with a blank expression. Just a few days ago, after the morning meeting, Jian Wushuang held her hand with a smile, letting her serve her well. For this reason, she also deliberately wore a more elegant red tulle today, and could dimly see the spring light in her red clothes, showing his good figure. Why does the Lord suddenly change his face today? This change of face, come too fast, right? Jian Wushuang heard a twitch of his mouth. Without having to think about his memory, he knew that it must be a ghost trick played by Tai Luo's corpse. No, this lord does not need a maid. Forcibly suppressing his temper, Jian Wushuang immensely said, Nine Musk dear, from now on, you are no longer the servant of this lord, go back to Shiyan Mountain and practice. The practice is the root. Jusu heard that, she suddenly trembled and her face became a little white. Jian Wushuang's sentence, although it is more euphemistic, but to put it plainly, isn't it just driving her away? I understand. Nine Musk bit her lower lip tightly, nodded, and then left a little embarrassed. Jian Wushuang looked at the back of Jioshan, shook his head slightly, then turned around, pressed the dark room button of the Lord's dormitory, and stepped into the dark room of the dormitory. Entering the hall, Jian Wushuang sat down directly on the yin and yang gossip array, and a large amount of virtual force rushed towards Jian Wushuang. Now that the battle between the virtual universe and the magical universe is about to start, he must seize every minute to improve his strength. At the same time, in the void crack, the 87th crack. It's like a hive in a palace group, in the middle palace. Flip-flop. A dull footstep came. 34 Xuanzuan strode into the hall. Return to Lord Void God, all cracks in the void have been investigated. On the throne of the hall, a low voice came out of the silkworm pupae. Anything? The words fell, and one of the 34 vaunted lords, who had eyes full of hands and vain lords without hands, stepped out and revived. Master Xingshan is wise. When we checked the 23rd crack, we found that the 23rd crack can lead to the divine universe. But unfortunately, the black-robed man who escaped into our universe and not caught. The existence in the silkworm chrysalis seems to have long expected this answer, saying, this person does not need to worry about it. It is not the first time for us to reach our virtual universe. When the Holocaust begins, this person naturally will surface. After a moment of pause, a low, hoarse voice like a man and a woman sounded again in the silkworm pupae. That being the case, let the war of catastrophe start ahead. As soon as this remark came to an end, all the people in the hall changed their faces, and then their eyes filled with joy. Listen to Lord Shushan, is this? Lord Shushan has completely recovered? Without waiting for them to think about it, the silkworm pupa wrapped in layers of white silk split a crack. A trace of black mist like black ink spread through this crack. Click, 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 click. Immediately, there were more and more cracks. The last, An earth-shattering loud noise came out, and the entire silkworm pupae exploded. A tall figure shrouded in endless black mist slowly stood up inside the silkworm pupae. His body was shrouded in dark mist, and it was hard to see, except for a pair of scarlet demon eyes, showing the supreme, breathtaking breath. Under these eyes, heaven and earth must bow their heads, and the universe must boil for them. He is above all beings, sitting alone in the clouds, like a god, looking down at the world. Ill wait, meet Lord Shushan. Ill wait, see Lord Shushan. Suddenly, there were 34 false honors in the hall, including left and right dummy, all kneeling down. Whether they are the masters of a sacred place, or the immortal Taoism, or an extremely ancient existence, at this moment they are kneeling at the feet of this dark mist, and their eyes are extremely frantic. Xian Shen, the master of the entire Xian universe. No one dare to disobey his orders. He is the one who says nothing in the universe. The gods of the whole body shrouded in the dark mist, just glanced at them and stopped saying anything. his figure rose straight up into the air, as if the heavenly men were kneeling at his feet, holding him up. Hundreds of thousands of virtual periods, God of the earth, it's time we meet again. Su Shen took up his hands and murmured to himself. His eyes seemed to penetrate the two universes directly and saw the gods in the universe of divine power. Next moment, he pressed his right hand slightly down. Battle of Holocaust, let's begin. Chapter 45-39. Cosmic Calendar, 6253. The Second Holocaust, which was called the Battle of the Heavens by later generations, began. On the same day, Shushan led the 32 virtual lords, left and right, through the 87th crack, into the magical universe. The world is shaking, countless clouds are surging, and the world seems to be in the middle of a winter night. The mountains and rivers are reversed, the sun and the moon are discolored, and even the stars are dim, and the voice of the meditation road comes from the sky, mysterious and mysterious. Except for some low-ranking virtual men who don't know what the situation is, those powerful people who have not reached the 87th crack are shocked. Their gazes turned to the place where the void was forbidden, their eyes flashed, and they mumbled to themselves, "The great world will start." Tianyao Holy Land, Suspension Tower. The Suspension Tower was built in the deepest part of the Tianyao Holy Land. No one can enter the Suspension Tower except for the contemporary Lord of Tianyao Holy Land and the Tianyao Xingzi who has extra authority. Because the Suspension Tower is the place where the three ancestors of Tianyao Holy Land slept. The reason why Tianyao Holy Land is able to overpower the heroes and is called one of the Zeons in the virtual universe is because of the existence of these three Tianyao ancestors. Each of the three ancestors of Tianyao is an old monster who has survived from ancient times. In the realm of Luhen Shuzuan, he has been soaked for countless years. The three of them usually slept in the Suspension Tower. Only when the Tianyao Holy Land was facing the crisis of life and death would they go out. Nowadays, no one knows. Among the three ancestors of Tianyao, at this moment, in addition to the third ancestor, they remain in the Suspension Tower. One of the four virtual respects. When the Of led the people and set off the horn of the Battle of Catastrophe and formally invaded the divine universe, at the top of the Suspension Tower, an old man wearing a blue robe and full of decaying ancient flavor slowly opened his eyes. A sharp streamer flickered through his hazy eyes. Havoc has begun? This person is truly the third ancestor of Tianyao Holy Land. I hope this war of catastrophes will not end so quickly. The old man has waited too long and wants to play. The third murmured to himself, then closed his eyes again. This time of the Holocaust battle, the virtual can be said to have gathered the top combat power of the entire virtual universe, breaking the boat. However, Shushan did not let all the top combat powers gather in the void, but divided into several waves, changing constantly. If a strong person fell or was seriously injured in the front, let him retreat and replace it with another one. Like the third ancestor of the Tianyao Holy Land, the palace master of the Hades, etc., is the reserve army responsible for the next few waves. At the same time, in another forbidden place in the virtual universe, the black mist and cloudy wind that has been eroded here all year round is the famous Jedi of the Void Universe. Even if the trace-level virtual lord came to this forbidden area, the blast of the black wind that covered the black mist would leave no bones and fly gray annihilated. Therefore, the virtual universe has never dared to set foot on the discoloration of this forbidden place. However, the group of people at the highest peak of the virtual universe knows that this forbidden area is the most mysterious organization in the entire universe, where the organization is. At the moment, in the middle of the forbidden area, a bronze ancient coffin straddled the void and hovered quietly in the stars. This bronze coffin is full of ancient mysterious texture. A trace of black mist and overcast wind spread along the gap of this bronze coffin. If people see this scene, they will be astounded and shocked. The dark misty wind that is enough to make the dead bones of the trace-level virtual princes absent is actually just a bronze ancient coffin. Around this bronze ancient coffin, more than a dozen men and women in black clothes with strong breaths sat quietly beside the bronze ancient coffin. If Jian Wushuang was here at the moment, he would suddenly find out that there are more than 10 men and women with strong breath, and some of them are the mysterious strong men who once chased and killed him in the 9 stars of the divine universe. When the virtual led many virtual lords and attacked the divine power universe, the more than 10 men and women sitting with their eyes closed and knees seemed to have some sense, and they also opened their eyes, giggle, is that guy from Xuanshan finally going to the divine universe? A charming woman with a ponytail in her hair and a black suit covering only her hips, with a huge breast on her left forehead, smiled loudly. Her name is Shi Si, seemingly playful and cute, like a maiden of the house. In fact, the 2 cosmic people who died in her hands are more than the sum of all the disciples of Shenzong. Oh, the 2 universes have been calm for too long, and this time I watched a good show. Another tissue eater said with a smile. Soon, the more than 10 men in black talked in a low voice, and their faces were full of excitement and strangeness. There was no awe in the words, whether it was to the gods of the gods or the gods. During the discussion among the people, a lazy voice came out from the bronze ancient coffin. Byte 1, byte 2, byte 3, byte 7, you go to the 2 universes and take a look. This sentence is plainly common, but the voice is full of charm, as if it has 10 million stresses, and it repeats in the ear. Yes, Lord. Hearing this person, from 1 to 7, all 7 stood up. Each of these 7 people has a powerful breath that cannot be said, and the man known as Devouring One is cultivated like a pit, like a prison, and even the 6-marked vanity in front of him is like a little witch seeing a big witch. Breath should be weak. Wearing a red mask on his face, only one eye was exposed, and there were actually 3 pupils in this eye. Go on. Like the strange sound waves of countless sounds coming out from the bronze weird. The next moment, from 1 to 7, a total of 7 people, starting from the position of their feet, continued to melt. After the 7 had left, the forbidden area gradually returned to peace, leaving only a bronze coffin with a muttering murmur. Xian Yi, these 2 universes of your choice will give you results soon. Come on now, the Emperor can't help it, you have to screw your head down. With the opening of the Second Holocaust, the entire virtual universe was turbulent, and countless ancient powers that were retreating were all awakened. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in the Lord's palace of the Emperor Shenzong and opened his eyes sharply. What happened? Jian Wushuang's face changed, and then the whole person disappeared instantly, and when it appeared again, it was already above the height of the refining Shenzong. Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked towards the sky. Suddenly he saw something extraordinary, and his pupils shrank suddenly. Chapter 45-40. In the eyes of Jian Wushuang, countless gods flow. He could see the countless opportunities and fortunes of the void universe, all rushing towards the void. Is it possible that the battle of havoc has begun? Jian Wushuang's heart shook. Immediately afterwards, a message from the of the earth was connected to the sword unparalleled. Master God, has the war of catastrophes begun? Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and asked. Yes, the virtual has completely awakened and led the army of the virtual universe into the magical universe. The god of tone has never had a heavy tone. So, what should I do? Jian Wushuang asked. The god of the god groaned for a moment, and then said, Swords are unparalleled. You must stop moving, wait until the people in the virtual universe completely relax their vigilance, and enter the magical universe. After that, the old man will contact you, and you will close Feng Tian insert in the forbidden area of the void and block their way. At that time, your task is completed, the old man will do his best to kill them as much as possible. As soon as this voice came down, even if it was just a messenger, Jian Wushuang could feel the killing intention in the tone of Zhou God. Silent for a while, Jian said without double emphasis, It is good. Although what Jian Wushuang wants to do now is to return to the extraterritorial battlefield to kill the quartet in order to express his depression, but he knows that what he is carrying is more important now. On the external battlefield, he can be one less sword unparalleled, and it will not affect the battle situation. But what he is going to do next will be able to settle the issue to a large extent and thoroughly establish the life and death victory between the two universes. Well, Jian Wushuang, the situation is urgent. The old man will not tell you more. When you need to set up Feng Tian banner, the old man will naturally contact you. After speaking, the of the sky hung up the news. Soon after the hang-up, the 5 elders such as Elder Moose, Elder Boss, and Elder Bian Shan all stood up to the sky and stood next to Jian Wushuang. They looked up, and they all caught the invisible air machine that was constantly flowing towards the void. The elders, Dust Bone, Lan Yu, and Jinya, all saw the excitement in their eyes. Elder Moose alone sighed softly. The catastrophe is about to happen. How we win, how we lose, we will all pay a painful price, and how hard it will be. After speaking, Elder Moose sighed softly. He is in the virtual universe, and it is rare that he is not the main faction. Jian Wushuang and Elder Banshan did not speak, and looked at each other. The two knew each other, a stop that would change the fate of the two universes. At the same time, leaving aside the extraterrestrial battlefield, the of the universe borrowed the list of sword unparalleled, and has already set up various coping schemes for the 34 virtual honors to fight with him. In the Divine Universe, because of the outbreak of the Holocaust War, the Divine Universe is the main battlefield. Therefore, the magnificence of the Divine Universe is almost several times more horrible than the virtual universe. On this day, the entire magical power of the universe roared, the road wailed, and the sky was gray, and it poured heavy rain. The heavy rain covered the world, covering the entire universe of divine power. Countless thunders exploded, and the silver snake danced like electricity. The entire divine power universe seems to be caught in the stormy end times. Countless monks stared into the sky in horror, exuding divine power but perceiving abnormalities, but no matter how they thought about it, they couldn't think of anything. And the top-level ancestral gates of the Divine Force universe, like Geodi Pavilion, Diwu Temple, and Life Temple, all received the news of the cosmic god at the first time. As a result, those ancient powers that fell asleep awoke. Temple of Life. After tens of thousands of years of rest and recuperation, the Temple of Life finally took a breath. Not only that, the Supreme of Blood Wave also went a step further, breaking through the trance and breaking into a half-step invincible state of supremacy. In today's Life Shrine, it is regarded as the first person to be cultivated. The Great Axe is the original injury that has been completely recovered. It is like the reformed body. It becomes more powerful than before. If it is allowed to grow, it will not take long for it to break through the half-step invincible Supreme. In addition, the ordinary Supreme who had fallen the most in the battlefield of Life Shrine at that time has also made up a lot in these years. For example, the magic wind that once had conflicts with Jian Wushuang dominated the expectations a while ago. The breakthrough reached the elementary extreme. And, perhaps because of the same great vitality and busy recuperating in the Diwu Temple, the Shrine of Life has poured a lot of fresh blood. Although there is no such perfect level of life as Jian Wushuang and King of the Ninth Calamity, the special life at the level of creation has broken through the number of hands. It can be expected that the future Shrine of Life will be full of vitality, and all kinds of rookie will emerge like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. By then, the Temple of Life will reach a new peak. At the same time as the Second War of the Holocaust broke out, the Supreme Masters, such as Bloodwave and Giant Axe, which were under negotiation, changed their faces, leaping out of shape, and came outside the empty hall. I saw 9 days, countless air blows, violent thunder constantly exploded, crackling booming, electric snakes shuttled and danced in the dark gray clouds, emitting incandescent electric light. The wind was like a giant beast. He growled, as if roaring in his ears. Bloodwave Supreme and others suddenly turned wild. Several of them were strong men who had participated in the Holocaust. Although they were still weak at the time, they played the role of waving flags in the Holocaust, but they were too familiar with this scene. This is precisely because of the collision between the laws of the two universes, the emergence of cosmic fluctuations, resulting in a scene. Big Axe, Heaven, you two are responsible for guarding the Temple of Life, so as not to trespass into the vein, I will take a look at the extraterritorial battlefield. Bloodwave Supreme took a deep breath, Shin said. The Supreme Axe and the Heavenly Supreme heard the words, looked at each other, and nodded solemnly. The Battle of Catastrophe is about the survival of the universe. If it is not for the Shrine of Life, it is necessary to send someone to guard it. Why don't they want to go to the extraterritorial battlefield? Okay, then I'll go. Bloodwave Supreme has a heavy expression. As soon as he steps on it, it will turn into a streamer. Before he rushed out, an ancient expanse, meanwhile, gently dragged him down. Next moment, a vicissitudes of voice sounded softly in their ears. Bloodwave, you also stay at the Temple of Life, the old man can go. Hearing this voice, the faces of the three Supreme Bloodwaves, the Great Axe Supreme, and the Heavenly Supreme were all mistaken for a moment, and then immediately a surge of joy appeared and looked back. Master Gav? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.